Out towards the east and southeast of the UK, here we'll see some sunshine at times and mostly dry weather. Whereas out towards the west, quite a few showers from the word go. They become more widespread and quite heavy at times here, also affecting other northern areas as we head into the afternoon. In the best of the sunshine, it will be warmer than on Sunday, particularly towards the southeast, highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, near 12 to 14 degrees towards the north, which is close to the seasonal average. As for Tuesday, well, again, it's the east that will fare best, with the best of the dry and bright weather at times. Whereas out towards the west, a good rash of showers, those showers merging to longer spells of rain at times. It does stay fairly unsettled during the week ahead, with showers at times, but notice those temperatures also rising into the high teens or low 20s.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God, are you joking?
You're joking. Really? Seriously, it's not a wine. What is it?
Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel. If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it is yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in the next hour, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton's a dastardly duo. But in a few moments' time, I'll be going head-to-head in a clash of minds with former Home Office advisor Claire Pearsall and also former editor for the Labour list Peter Edwards. Of course, that will be the clashes coming up. At 4, my monologue making the case for the Conservatives to stick with Rishi Sunak, for goodness sake. Then at 5, my outside guest now. She has appeared in X on the Beach, signed by Katie Price and celebrity Big brother. And who do you think she is? That's coming up in the next hour. In a moment, you've got to work out who she is. If I'm outside, they ain't coming up this hour. What has happened to our universities? They used to be the bastion of free speech, but now they couldn't be further from that. But before we do all that, let's get your latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories this hour. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting says Dr Dan Poulter has not been offered a peerage to defect from the Tory party to the Labour Party. Mr Streeting has defended Dr Poulter's decision, saying it shows only Sir Keir Starmer can be trusted with the NHS. Conservative MP Dr Dan Poulter said he'd sit on the Labour benches until the general election and then stand down. The decision comes just days before local elections across England and Wales on the 2nd of May. The Prime Minister has again this morning refused to rule out a general election in July. Amid speculation, a disastrous set of local election results for the Tories could force his hand. Wes Streeting says Dr Poulter isn't defecting to save a seat, rather he's defecting to save the NHS.
There will be millions of people, disaffected Conservative voters like Dan Poulter out there, who can see the chaos in the Conservative Party, see the failure to deliver, and are looking at the alternative. And I'd ask those people to trust the doctor, who's seen the Conservative Party up close, has seen the changed Labour Party of Keir Starmer up close, and has decided that ultimately we need a Labour government in this country to get our NHS back on its feet, to turn the economy around and to make sure that we can look to the future with hope and optimism again.
Meanwhile, Policing Minister Chris Philp defended the government's handling of the NHS, pointing to record levels of spending.
Just in the last year alone, the NHS has grown by 68,000 staff, and there are today 7,000 more doctors and 21,000 more nurses than there were a year ago. And tens of thousands of people each year are fleeing the Welsh-run the Labour-run NHS in Wales to have treatment in England. The waiting lists, the proportion of the public who are on either very long waiting lists or indeed the proportion of the public in Wales on a waiting list at all is higher, materially higher than it is in England. So on any measure, the Labour Party are doing a terrible job.
In other news, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has called for a cap on net migration, claiming a far more restrictive system is needed. Jenrick wants a cap of less than 100,000 a year, arguing that's the only way to restore voters' trust. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, he says the government's recently passed Rwanda bill will soon join the graveyard of policies that failed to tackle illegal migration, but called legal migration a bigger scandal.
Last 30 years, politicians of all stripes have promised controlled and reduced immigration only to deliver the opposite. And the public are rightly furious at what's happened. It's placed immense strain on housing, on public services, on community cohesion, and it hasn't improved the economy. What we're proposing is that we return to the tens of thousands, but unlike previously, we have a cap. So Parliament itself votes for a democratic lock, so the public can have a degree of confidence, which they don't have today, that when politicians say these things, they mean it.
Well, that as more than 900 Channel migrants have crossed illegally into the UK in less than a week. That's according to the latest Home Office figures. Official figures show 359 migrants crossed in 8 small boats just yesterday. GB News captured this exclusive footage yesterday. 51 migrants had to be rescued after their small boat ran aground on a sandbank off the Kent coast. Northern Ireland's First Minister has called for a thought-out response to people who seek asylum in Ireland after travelling from the UK. The Irish government claims there's been a shift in migration patterns in recent months, with the number of migrants crossing from Northern Ireland into Ireland higher than 80%. The comments come as Rishi Sunak said that shows the deterrent effect of his Rwanda plan is working because people are worried about coming here. The Alba Party MSP, whose vote could be crucial to Scotland's First Minister, says it's time to build relationships. But she also says the price of her support will be higher, as Humza Yousaf dithers, she says. Ash Regan hasn't confirmed how she'll vote in the motions of no confidence at Holyrood next week. Writing in the Sunday Mail, she said she will only use her vote in the way that'll be best for Scotland. Meanwhile, Youssef is asking leaders of rival parties to find common ground with the SNP as his leadership hangs in the balance. It comes after the collapse of the SNP's power-sharing deal with the Greens. And finally, royal news. The Duke of Sussex is returning to the UK in just over a week to attend a ceremony marking the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games. It'll be the first time Prince Harry's back in the UK since his visit to see the King after his cancer diagnosis in February. And it's the first major event he'll attend in the UK for some time. He'll be at the service of Thanksgiving at London St Paul's Cathedral on the 8th of May, where he'll provide a reading at the event, marking a decade since the inaugural event in 2014. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, universities are no longer the home of freedom of speech. Now, when I was at uni all those many, many years ago, it was a place where people went to experiment with everything and all views were on the table. Life was about learning new things. But these days, it seems that universities have become a breeding ground for indoctrination, and many students appear to lack the ability to think critically or comprehend another point of view. The other day, Jacob Rees-Mogg was met with these scenes. So for those listening on radio, that is Jacob Rees-Mogg. He's walking towards the car and he's surrounded by students. They're haranguing him and they're all holding pro-Palestine and Palestinian flags. It's absurd. The car's sort of pulling away with these people still sort of almost clinging to the sides of it. It's ridiculous, all because he was a speaker at their university. And only this weekend, across parts of the world, universities have been gripped by a pro-Palestine ideology. They've literally been captured. What on earth is going on? But then, are we surprised? What can you expect when you've got people like this teaching our kids?
At Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, targeted at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals.
I mean, seriously, it's been a slow mission creep that has come to light over the last, I'd say, about 5 years, with professors like Kathleen Stock being hounded out of her university because she believes that sex trumps gender. Well, of course it does. And teachers like the one at Batley and Spen still in hiding over a depiction of Mohammed. Now, I blame the woke, cotton-covered liberals who believe that everyone has a right to come first. They don't. The woke karate who tell parents that you can never smack your children. I'm not talking about beating or hitting, but a good parent made to feel bad for instilling loving discipline. What on earth has happened to our universities? What have they done to our kids? Are they captured for good? So before we get stuck into the debates over the next hour, let me introduce you to my clashers. Joining me today is the former editor of the Labour list, Peter Edwards, and also former government advisor, Claire Pearsall. So here's what's coming up in today's clash. Can there be a case for mass migration being an asset to the economy? We'll discuss that in an hour's time. Then is it time for the Tories to change their leader? As MP Dr Dan Poulter leaves the Conservative Party and picks up the Labour whip, has Prime Minister Rishi Sunak lost control of his party? Can anyone save them from election embarrassment? I don't think so. Even with the Tories in a mess, can you then trust Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer? After the leader of the opposition U-turns on other pledges, such as the party's green policies, will he keep his latest one to keep the triple lock? And how long can the Scottish First Minister cling on to power? With SNP leader Hamza Yousaf's government falling off the rails after losing their power-sharing agreement with the Greens, can he turn things around, or is he destined a fall from grace? Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Get in touch at gbnews.com/your say or tweet me at gbnews. Right, so it's time for the clash. And the question I'm asking, is freedom of speech allowed in UK's universities? Let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel editor of the Labour list, Peter Edwards, and also former government advisor, Claire Pearsall. Right, Claire Pearsall, I'm going to start with you. What on earth is happening to these universities? Did you go to university?
I didn't.
You didn't?
No, I missed out on that. I don't think they would have liked me particularly. I went straight out to work at 18, but I understand from friends of mine that you get into a kind of like an idealistic mode when you go into university. You're there, you're going to change the world, you're going to free everybody, you're going to do whatever it is at that moment. And I think that the peer pressure surrounding people at universities is enormous. I think that's now been taken up several notches with these really divisive and very serious debates that we need to have in this country. People are taking a very basic viewpoint. They're taking a stand on one side or the other without actually understanding the context of what it is they're discussing. Now, universities really should be there to expand and open individuals' minds. You should be there to learn more and to enjoy learning. But unfortunately, it just seems that quite a lot of views are going unchallenged. People are allowed to believe they're completely right. But I think that this is a fault of the education system in its entirety, that you don't allow people to be wrong. You don't ever tell them no, and you don't allow them to be disappointed. And I think this is what we're seeing, is the ultimate crescendo, is that people go to university believing that they know absolutely everything, when really they know nothing at all and they're not prepared to learn.
Fixed mindset, Peter Edwards, what do you think?
I don't know if there's a fixed mindset. I mean, in your monologue, you lump together lots of different things, and obviously when people...
Well, that's how I do them.
Yeah, well, let me answer the question first of all.
Would you? That'd be great.
You quoted the school, I can't remember, I think it might have been in Yorkshire, where the allegations of defacing an image of the Prophet Muhammad. That's very different to free speech at university. So Jacob Rees-Mogg, I think it was this week, you played the footage.
That's right.
Clearly, it's right to have a ferocious argument, but it mustn't cross over into intimidation. And I was interested, even Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was there, said this was a free and fair debate, it was very robust, and he basically said, I defend their right to protest. And it's other people, including the Conservative Party, who said it went too far. We'd all agree there shouldn't be intimidation, definitely shouldn't be throwing four-letter words at Jacob Rees-Mogg, as I think happened. But on that particular debate in Cardiff, Jacob Rees-Mogg said it was kind of legitimate.
Well, he might well say that, but a baying mob following him, if he didn't have security and protection, I'm wondering how that would have turned out. So I don't really think... I mean, that's quite intimidatory. There's no way, even if Jacob Rees-Mogg is extremely polite, and I think he was actually being very, very fair. From what you can see there are a mob of people swearing at him and saying offensive things. That's not really acceptable. If you want to have a debate and a discussion, that's great. But throwing out all the swearing words and intimidating people, I don't think that's right.
Well, intimidation's wrong, and some of that, and I must stress I've not seen it all, looked intimidatory, because, as you say, we've generally, unless you're in really half it, have a good, healthy British tradition of where high-ranking politicians can really go around, and they'll have a researcher or a spin doctor. They won't, and generally don't need security. But we've had some horrific events in recent years that have made us revisit that. Jacob Rees-Mogg is a backbencher, and if, say, there's him, a researcher, and 20 folk all shouting at him, I probably would find that a bit intimidatory.
It is intimidating, yeah.
So good on him for being so even-handed, because even though I don't agree with him on much, he does value a free and fair debate.
Yeah, I do. I think... I just wonder what's happened these days, though, because it seems that there doesn't seem to be an ability to critical think. And I've lectured around schools a lot, so about the last year, I was doing it for about 8 years, going to different schools and talking about critical thinking and all over the country. And it was interesting that a lot of the kids only thought what their parents thought, and they weren't really open to suggestions of different ideas. And it does feel that it's something that has actually started at a lot earlier age. What do you think the catalyst for that would have been?
we're all a product of our parents to a certain degree, but whether it's going to university or becoming a teenager, then, you know, intellectually you going to work and having to pay tax is a massive adjustment as well.
Reality.
You develop your own ideas, relationship with another. But I'd slightly question the idea that free speech has been shut down at universities, because I think there have obviously been a small number of cases where university authorities said you mustn't do X, Y or Z, but I think they're the ones that get picked up by the media. And I think in most universities there is still a free and fair debate the vast majority of the time.
Do you think that's Claire? I mean, remember there was that one in Oxford University, or was it Cambridge, where they wanted to take down pictures of royal images because it would enforce colonialism and upset other people around them. I mean, it's...
That's right, it was the Lord Balfour portrait that was ruined.
In the common room. Yeah.
In the common room. But also, I think you get the deplatforming of individuals, which has to be wrong. You cannot censor views just because you think you disagree with them. And this is what we're here for. We're here for debate. You want to be able to listen to somebody else's point of view. And I don't think that students are encouraged to do that. They're very steadfast in their agreement. And we've all been teenagers. We all think we know better. We all go against what the popular or what your parents' point of view is. And you come up with your own, even if it's completely off the wall. But you're not encouraged to challenge that these days. And that's what I find really disappointing. And I think that Jacob Rees-Mogg, in all fairness, was exceptionally good at saying I defend these individuals' right to have their views and to shout them loudly. But when it comes into intimidation, if you cannot stand there and get your point across without swearing and issuing threats, then you've really lost that argument. And that side now does look very much as though they've lost the plot, that they are turning into a group of individuals with no point. And that's a shame, because I think we need all sides of the argument. But when they behave like that, it's really easy now to just dismiss them.
Yeah, it does seem that they've lost the line, where the line is that you cross into from a debate and a good argument into that which to me looked like intimidation and shouldn't really be allowed. I know Jacob was very polite about it. He said that, you know, that they were having a good discussion. But I think chasing somebody sort of to their car with placards and swearing, that wouldn't work for me. But what do you think? GB Views, get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. This is The Clash. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 18 minutes after 3 o'clock. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, is it time Humza Yousaf went after his worst week of his leadership yet? But next, should the Tories replace Rishi Sunak before it's too late?
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sadiq Khan has been accused once again of plotting to bring in a pay-per-mile charging scheme in London, after a Labour councillor said it was only ruled out for now. A spokesperson for Conservative mayoral candidate Susan Hall told GB News the mask has slipped and Sadiq Khan's plans for pay-per-mile are as clear as day. The only way to get the ULEZ expansion scrapped and to stop Sadiq Khan's pay-per-mile plans is to vote for me on May the 2nd. Khan has faced significant backlash for his ULEZ expansion, which saw the scheme extended to cover Outer London. He has previously ruled out introducing pay-per-mile in London, accusing Susan Hall's team of spreading misinformation around the issue. However, Sadiq Khan's transport strategy appears to commit the mayor to conducting a review of road user charging schemes, which could involve the introduction of a pay-per-mile style levy. The strategy report was published in 2018 and revised in 2022. It says these could replace schemes such as the congestion charge, low emission zone and the ULEZ. In doing so, the mayor will consider the appropriate technology for any future schemes and the potential for a future scheme that reflects distance, time, emissions, road danger and other factors in an integrated way. Last week, a spokesman for Mr. Khan said, "This is an absolute nonsense from a Tory party desperate to distract from their 14 years of failure and is categorically untrue." Sadiq has definitively ruled out pay-per-mile. Pay-per-mile was first proposed in Boris Johnson's transport strategy when he was mayor. Nicholas Dunning, GB News.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua, and it is The Clash. Right, so I'm asking, should the Tories change their leader before the next election? As former Health Minister Dr Dan Poulter defects to the Labour Party over the government's handling of the NHS, has Prime Minister Rishi Sunak lost control of his party? Since the last election, the Conservatives' parliamentary majority has been cut from 80 to 41. Literally, they've lost almost 50% of their seats after a series of resignations, by-elections and defections. So what do you think? Should the Tories change their leader to save them from further embarrassment, or would that just be even more embarrassment? So joining me for The Clash to discuss, former editor of the Labour list, Peter Edwards, and also former government advisor, Claire Pearsall. Peter Edwards.
No, the Tories have got to stick with Rishi Sunak. They'd be a laughingstock if they had another leader. What Labour wants is a general election. And I actually think most of the Tories recognise this. I do think Rishi Sunak will lead the Tories into polling day, whenever that occurs. And also, it's a bit of a David Miliband, Gordon Brown situation again. If you were the Tory candidate that took over from Rishi Sunak to be, quote-unquote, a fag-end Prime Minister for 3, 4, 5 months, you're a bit of a footnote in history, aren't you?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting footnote because you'll be at the end of all the embarrassing footnotes that have come before you. Claire Pearsall.
No, we can't. We can't go through this whole beauty pageant of choosing another leader. I mean, what is it going to achieve? We've had 3, and just because people don't like them, it doesn't mean that you can just get rid of them without actually going to the country. I think that we've pushed the limits as to what the public are going to accept, and it's realistically the public that should choose who the next Prime Minister it is. It's not up to the Conservative Party to install somebody that they like at that moment in the vain hope that it's all going to get magically better. I think that Labour have a real problem at the moment, is that they're not looking like a real party in waiting to go into government. This is not a 1997 in that respect. They're not ready to go. They're not inspiring. And I think a lot of people, when you talk to them on the street, just say, we don't want any of them. They're all as bad as each other.
No one thinks it's a 1997 moment because Britain is in kind of an unhappier and certainly poorer state, whatever the reason you put that down to, pandemic, Brexit or the government or anything else. I think Labour look a lot more serious than they did a few years ago. They got people like Rachel Reeves, Starmer, Wes Streeting, who have a bit of gravitas about them, John Healey, the Shadow Defence Secretary. That's not always been the case in the last decade. I think the other point that Claire hints at is that governments can lose elections, but also oppositions have to win them. And that's when, difference between struggling over the finishing line of a majority of 10 or 20 versus getting a really large number. So it is Labour's to win, but they do have to do it. And that's why every time a Labour person goes on TV, they say no complacency.
But Keir Starmer's been very fortunate. I mean, he's sat around and things have just fallen off for him. So even though he's said some ludicrous things like, agreed, he said the woman doesn't have a penis, or 99.9 or 99% of them don't, or whatever it was that he said, even though he said some ridiculous things, the fact that the Tory party are in such a mess, all of that has been kind of hoodwinked, and we've just moved on and focused on the Tories. So the Labour Party, and now they're doing a lot of U-turning. He's talked about the triple lock. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But do you think that the Tories actually have any hope? Is there?
There's always hope. There is always hope. And The one thing that you can be sure of, it's not over until people have voted, and it's 10 p.m. on whichever day that the Prime Minister has chosen for the election. So there is always hope. What I find worrying are the amounts of people who say they don't know how they're going to vote, or they're just not going to turn out. And I think complacency in that respect is really, really dangerous for all sides. But they need to be given something to choose from. And at the moment, the Conservative Party are busy fighting each other more than anything else. And the Labour Party are busy putting out policy ideas and then U-turning on them really, really quickly and making a mess of pretty much any kind of detail as to what it is that they can offer. That should concern a lot of people, is that they, A, cannot decide on a policy, B, cannot tell you how it's costed, and then C, when push comes to shove and there's some scrutiny, it's U-turned on immediately.
I challenge the idea that Keir Starmer's lucky. Remember, Labour, when he took over, had lost 4 elections in a row and was polling about 25%, and whatever your view is of Jeremy Corbyn, I think we can all agree he's not successful as leader.
No.
So I don't buy the idea that Keir Starmer's just lucky, you know, he's just Johnny on the spot.
I think he is. I mean, look what's happened in Scotland.
He's transformed the party so much.
He has done, literally, he's just sat there as everything's fallen around his ears, and he's just waited for it. I mean, look, what's happened in Scotland, for example, with Humza Yousaf, a lot of people can't help it, but it kind of rolls off the tongue. Sorry, Humza, but, you know. but what do you think, though? Because with regard to that, should Scotland's First Minister, should he go? Should Humza Yousaf go? The leader of the SNP is rallying troops as he faces a vote of no confidence. Humza Yousaf continues to battle for his job at the top of the Scottish politics after a power-sharing agreement with the Green Party fell apart, or one that I think he dismantled it, didn't he? Leaving him in charge of a minority government. So should he be the biggest person, or the bigger person, and simply just step down? I'm not thinking that's going to happen, but Claire Pearce, is it time for him to go? He's in the hands of Ash Regan, who he said that he didn't miss her when she left. What was the word that he used?
Yeah, it was no great loss.
No great loss, that's
And
right.
now we come to the ultimate irony that she is the one that pretty much holds the balance of power as to whether he stays or not. I don't think he should resign. I think he should face up to the vote of people in his own parliament and see what the level of anger is. I mean, he has been dealt a really bad hand, but he's also played it very, very badly.
Well, he didn't have to carry on with the gender recognition reform.
That's what I mean about he has played it very, very badly.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things he could have done, but he set himself up as the continuity candidate. And unfortunately, if that's what you're going to be, then you are going to take the fall with it. Going into coalition with the Greens, I think, was always fraught with danger, especially given the economy in Scotland and the oil industry being inextricably linked. Yeah, absolutely. So if you're looking at that net zero, but also ignoring the fact that so many jobs are dependent on it, and that's a very, very proud industry. But he also talks more about Gaza than he does about Glasgow. And I think the people of Scotland really do deserve better when it comes to their politics. I think he needs to stand there and face the music. Otherwise, he will never understand quite what it is he did wrong.
What do you think? Should he just clear off now?
I think he's finished politically.
He is finished, isn't he?
There's always a case for fighting on. We've all met failure in life in some capacity or other. I think it's important to preserve your dignity. But in terms of what actually happens next, and he could survive the week. But remember, Theresa May won a confidence vote and still stepped down. And going back a long way in 1990, Margaret Thatcher, I think she certainly got through the first round. And remember, she gave that press conference with Bernard Ingham, I fight on, I fight to win. So you can get an OK result in a confidence vote, but really a days are numbered anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Humza Yousaf. But this is what I was saying about Keir Starmer. What's happening now, he hasn't controlled this. Humza Yousaf has made a mess of it, frankly. And now it looks like there is an opportunity again for Scotland.
It's a bit more than that, if I may say.
Let me finish. There's another opportunity again for the Labour Party to reclaim a lot of territory back in Scotland.
It's a bit more than that. I mean, I've got friends in Scotland and I visit every year pretty much and, you know, talk to different people. They're not all Labour folk at all. People in Scotland are fed up with the state of public services, and that's gone from Alex Salmond to Nicola Sturgeon to Humza Yousaf. So, yes, he may have played his hand badly, but the decline in public services in Scotland has been going on quite a bit longer than merely the last 12 months.
Well, that of course is true, but he hasn't done anything that is good, that has affected it, really. He hasn't done anything good about it. All he's talked about, all we've heard about are a lot of the culture or issues, the hate crime legislation, which is totally unpoliceable. I mean, that was a ridiculous thing, him being the most hated in the end. I mean...
Well, yeah, I mean, I think those are vexatious reports. But your point...
No, that's not... Well, that's true. It's true. It's true. There were 1,000 complaints a day. Then by the end of the week, there were 7,000 people complaining. The police had agreed, or Hamza said that all of them would be investigated. I spoke to Morag, a 74-year-old woman who was arrested by the police because of a spurious claim by a neighbour.
Well, that's really daft. And politicians of all stripes have got to remember that it's not their job to run the police, that operational discharge of police duties, to use a very boring phrase, are meant decided by chief officers, not politicians who are driven by the electorate. But your broader point, which I do agree with, which is that Scotland's got all these problems, the drug death capital of Europe, and they're not focused on the priorities.
Not at all. Well, we could say that about a lot of them around here, not just the Scottish Parliament, but if you just tuned in, welcome. It's just coming up to 31 minutes after 3 o'clock. Sorry, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, is it a victory for women after it emerged that transgender ideology in hospitals is set to be banned? But first, let's get your latest news with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. It's 3:30. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting says Dr Dan Poulter has not been offered a peerage to defect from the Tory party to Labour. Mr Streeting is defending Dr Poulter's decision, saying it shows only Sir Keir Starmer can be trusted with the NHS. Dr Poulter says he'll sit on the Labour benches until the general election and then stand down. It comes just days before local elections across England and Wales, and the Prime Minister refusing again to rule out a general election in July. Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick is calling for a cap on net migration, saying it's the only way to restore voters' trust. Jenrick says he wants a far more restrictive system, allowing less than 100,000 people a year. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, he said the government's recently passed Rwanda bill will, quote, join the graveyard of policies that failed to tackle illegal migration. Well, meanwhile, more than 900 Channel migrants have crossed illegally to the UK in less than a week. That's according to the latest figures from the Home Office. 359 migrants crossed in 8 small boats yesterday. GB News captured this exclusive footage. 51 migrants there had to be rescued after their small boat ran aground on a sandbank off the Kent coast. And the Alba Party MSP, whose vote could be crucial to save Scotland's First Minister, says it's time to build relationships. Ash Regan hasn't confirmed how she'll vote in the motions of no confidence at Holyrood, but says the price of her support will be higher as Hamza Yousaf dithers. Yousaf is asking leaders of rival parties to find common ground after the collapse of the SNP's power-sharing deal with the Greens. Right, for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code. It's on your screen right now, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. Coming up in the next hour, we will cross live to speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge. Stay tuned, though. This is The Clash.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Organisations, plural, because there's loads of people doing this. The organisations are charging schools to be part of this odd league table about who's trying to outdo who when it comes to who is more trans inclusive with the kids than the next person. There's something makes me uneasy about this.
Supposing a child comes home and says, you think, oh, I've done well today. He said, well, how have you done? He said, well, I was #1 painter, or I was #1 reader. No, I wasn't. I was made LGBT champion. This is a 4- and 5-year-old. Look, I can understand this, actually, as we develop into the secondary school. I can understand more debates taking place. I cannot understand why we have to thrust it at young children. And I think if you ask the parents, they'd be hostile to it. And what about the role the teacher has to play in all this?
Society has been one way, the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they're pushing it very far in order to kind of proliferate change. And this is probably the toughest period in that evolutionary process. process, because the LGBTQ plus community is saying that you've got to really rage against the machine to get people to listen. Because put it like this now, even this conversation, the whole country is listening, the whole world is listening. These are the kinds of eyeballs and ears they haven't had before. And there's going to be friction. There's going to be a locking of heads in the process to getting to a point where you establish a new equilibrium where they feel more incorporated. It's like I've said, the greatest force of allies that the LGBTQ plus community has always had is heterosexual women. What you're moving towards now is doing things that is beginning to turn them from allies into people who feel that, oh, for you to thrive, I'm being deprived, and that's a problem. When they realize you're alienating allies, they will understand you've got to recalibrate to have that kind of understanding between both parties.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday, the 2nd of May,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections, we'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday, the 2nd of May at midnight on GB News.
Welcome back. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, we're discussing Keir Starmer and his latest triple lock. Do you believe that Keir Starmer actually means business when he's talking about the triple lock? Now, the Labour leader makes another promise, despite you telling on many of his pledges. If his party gets into number 10, the leader of the opposition says that he'll keep the state pension triple lock. But can you trust him not to change his mind? So to discuss this, going head-to-head in the clash, my former editor for the Labour list, Peter Edwards, also former government advisor, Claire Pearsall. Peter Edwards, I'm going to come to you first. Listen, Keir Starmer has done many a U-turn. He said he's going to keep the triple lock because probably he wants the pension vote, because that's a large vote. They're usually more conservative. Do you believe that he's telling the truth on this, or do you think we can trust him?
Of course I believe he's telling the truth, and I do trust him. I'll give you a couple of reasons. So first of all, I think the public trust him a lot more than they do some other politicians, because he's had a fairly steady poll lead. Now, it doesn't mean Labour will win, but if your poll lead's around 20%, that implies a level of trust among the electorate. So that's based on the facts. There's also a more cynical view, which you hinted at, which is pensioners vote in quite high proportion. And it's very interesting that politicians of all stripes do change their mind, but also politicians of all stripes have retained the triple lock. So I'm certain if Labour win, he'll retain the triple lock, just as Tory chancellors retain the triple lock, because pensioners vote.
What do you think, Claire Pearsall? He's U-turned more than you could ever imagine. The green energy policy was his big one, 28 billion, and that was definitely going to happen. And then when he realised it would destabilise the markets,
Well, it's Liz Truss that destabilised the markets.
Well, no, we're talking specifically about your green energy pledge there.
Because it was unfunded, shocker. And I think this is the problem, is that the Labour Party are coming out with an awful lot of promises to things like keeping the triple lock, which is incredibly expensive. So he's going to have to continue that for some years, or is he going to go down the road of keep it for the election and then bin it a year later? But you've also got the problems of all of the other spending commitments that his government, or government in waiting, seems to be making. And now, if you're going to have the windfall tax paying for an awful lot of things 4 times over, VAT on private schools, that's meant to be paying for several different things. Every time I look at something else...
Non-dom tax status.
Non-dom tax status. And then you want to nationalise the railways. Well, that also is going to take a very large amount of money, isn't going to save anybody anything, and is a spectacularly bad idea. So you think, well, OK, so out of all of this, where are you getting the money from? If you're Keir Starmer and you're saying that the Conservative Party are not handling the economy very well, but then you are writing an awful lot of cheques that your body's not going to be able to cash, doesn't that make you more irresponsible in the long run. I think it's purely, we are in an election year. The triple lock is going to be incredibly popular with an older population who do turn out to vote, whether it be postal vote or physically going to their polling station. They are the demographic that do so. And not all of them will be Labour supporters, but they may well be that sort of don't know category, and that's what they're going to look for. But I do think the public will going to be very, very disappointed should Keir Starmer end up as Prime Minister. These things will have to go by the wayside. You can see it already with the amount of times he's flip-flopped on all these policies.
I mean, Claire makes a good point. He has flip-flopped a lot. You know, people want to have... We all want to have someone we can trust to vote for. And I myself, personally, I'm politically homeless, so I don't particularly have a party that I'll be voting for. None of them have convinced me. And I'm personally not convinced that he won't change his mind because he keeps doing it.
OK, so to walk through it based on the facts, leaders of the opposition are generally in post for about 4 or 5 years. David Cameron had 5 years as leader of the opposition. On his core economic policy of will match Tony Blair, Gordon Brown's spending plan, he changed his mind unutterably because of the economic conditions of the time. So it's fair enough that any leader of the opposition, rather than being dogmatic, changes their position as the economy changes. But take one example, because Claire reeled off a few things. Rail nationalisation. Now, I'm sure everyone knows if they don't, rail franchises are about 5, 6, 7, 8 years. They're not forever. And they'll expire. So they can just roll back into public ownership without anyone having to write a big cheque to do so. The other thing to say briefly about rail nationalisation, and Claire was quite critical of it, it's not just popular among the general public, it's even popular among Conservative voters.
Yeah. There are massive, massive problems with
costs, won't there?
There will be costs attached to it, and it also isn't going to bring down the ticket price, which is always the promise that is made, that ticket prices will become lower. Well, no, they won't, because that's not going to be able to happen. You still need the investment to go back in. But also, the problem with nationalising it is that you're bringing it then into line with things like the NHS, education, any other public service that we depend on, and it's going to add rail into demanding money out of a pot that is going to get smaller and smaller unless you're going to increase taxes. So unless the Labour government in waiting says we're going to need to raise taxes because we want to nationalise all of these industries, we want to bring them back into public control, you have to be able to pay for them. And if you're going to put on one side pitting the NHS off against education, off against trains for who gets the money, that's not going to work. It's going to break down the country. And I think that they need to be really honest that they cannot afford it and they will have to put up taxes, which is something that they always shy away from.
Well, Labour have said they won't raise income tax. And obviously, no one can raise national insurance now because Jeremy Hunt, whether you agree or not, has changed the political climate around national insurance. But to go back to Claire's point, the analogy between health, schools and trains does not stack up at all. So to give one massive distinction, train companies or, say, a regional train company owned by the state can generate their own income by selling tickets and by selling advertising space and so on and so on. An NHS trust, which is kind of federated, although it's controlled by the Health Secretary, generates almost no income, does it? Maybe it has a bit of land it can rent out. They're just not the same to say schools and hospitals and trains are run in the same way from Whitehall.
I think the point she's making is that a lot of these promises that he is making, so with regard to schools and with regard to trains, and with a lot of them he'll probably end up retracting or going back on, which he has done. So that's why the question is whether we can trust him on this. So we're not comparing them and saying they're the same. She's saying that all these things that he's saying he's going to get the money off for this, then he's going to do this, none of it really makes much sense. And now we're coming to this triple lock and we're saying, can we trust him on it?
We can definitely trust him. But remember, all government departments, regardless of who wins the election, are in competition for taxpayer resources. That's just a fact of life.
That is a fact of life,
You're
yes.
going to throw even more people into that pot. So if you have a pot of money, government departments, if you are then going to be starting to run railways at the same time, yes, they will generate some income.
But there's a taxpayer subsidy already. We are paying... No one should think that any of us, taxpayers, are not paying for the railways. We're paying through fares and there's a taxpayer subsidy. So we're already paying through the nose.
But only part of it. And that's the problem. So you let out the franchises. You know, this is the sort of the free market at work. I'm not suggesting that the franchises are perfect because they really aren't. And I think that the government had a really good idea with the Great British Railways project and having somebody in overall control of what goes on the railways. But it isn't quite as it needs to be. It isn't beefed up, it doesn't have enough teeth. I think if you just give it to the state, then you're going to leave it to go to rack and ruin, because there just isn't enough money to be able to split between all of the needs.
Well,
it will need investment.
He's got a lot of commitments that he's going to apparently get into, and he's used that non-dom tax status, I think, about 100 times. Now the private schools...
The Tories pitched that policy, it was so good.
Well, they may have done, but they probably won't be in power, will they?
So the Tories were against it up until their point they're in favour of it.
Well, probably the non-dom tax status, though, isn't it? The point I was trying to make with it before you interrupted me was that he was using that to literally pay for everything. That's the point I'm making, not about whether the Tory party, whether it's a good or bad policy. But it's coming up my monologue on the changing leaders of the Tory party. But next, is it a victory for women after it emerged that transgender ideology is set to be banned from NHS hospitals?
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, we hold on to rather unsettled weather conditions across the UK, but we will also see a gradual rise in temperature. Low pressure's on the scene at the moment, and it's this weather front towards the northeast of the UK that's bringing some outbreaks of quite persistent rain, coupled with quite tightly packed isobars, so quite a blustery feel to the weather as well. And we do hold on to outbreaks of rain across the far northeast of Scotland, heading into the overnight period. Elsewhere, there'll be some clear spells for a time, but the showers out towards the west and southwest certainly do gather into the early hours of Monday, turning quite heavy and becoming more organised by the morning on Monday itself. Could see a touch of frost in one or two very sheltered spots, but on the whole, it's a frost-free night. And then into Monday, we'll see an east-west split, much as we did on Sunday, but this time it's the east seeing the best of the weather. Out towards the east and southeast of the UK, here we'll see some sunshine at times and mostly dry weather. Whereas out towards the west, quite a few showers from the word go. They become more widespread and quite heavy at times here, also affecting other northern areas as we head into the afternoon. In the best of the sunshine, it will be warmer than on Sunday, particularly towards the southeast, highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, nearer 12 to 14 degrees towards the north, which is close to the seasonal average. As for Tuesday, well, again, it's the east that will fare best, with the best of the dry and bright weather at times. Whereas out towards the west, a good rash of showers, those showers merging to longer spells of rain at times. It does stay fairly unsettled during the week ahead, with showers at times, but notice those temperatures also rising into the high teens or low 20s.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
48 minutes after 3 o'clock. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's fine. You've got just over 2 hours left. That's good. But the NHS, though, is cracking down on transgender ideology in hospitals. If you just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. And this week, Health Secretary Victoria Atkins, I know, keep up. Who was before her? Was it Tracy Coffey?
Steve Barclay.
Oh, it was Steve Barclay, was it?
Yeah.
Before him, any guesses?
It was Jeremy Hunt and Dr. Therese Coffey.
That's right. Because they've been in and out, haven't they?
So I get a bonus point for that.
You do, actually. But yeah, so Victoria Atkins now, this is another one, will set out a series of proposals, including banning transgender women from single-sex female wards. Now, to discuss this, joining me in the clash, former editor of The Labourist, Peter Edwards, and also former government advisor, Claire Pearsall. Peter Edwards, I'm coming to you first on this. What do you think about that?
I can see both sides. I want trans people to be treated with dignity, and trans people will break their arms and get coughs and colds like the rest of us, and I want them to be treated with dignity when they use NHS services. But I also think, however much it may have been overblown, there were some NHS trusts that made some seriously bad decisions, and that my belief in that is underpinned by the fact that...
What do you mean bad decisions? Like what? Give me an example.
Putting trans people on single-sex wards, I think, is very unwise. I also think that using a word like chest feeding...
Oh, God, that's terrible.
...baffles me, and I really want trans people to be treated with dignity, but men cannot give birth. And that's just a fact. And I think it wasn't all trusts. We've got to be clear. There are one or two things put on NHS websites that seemed really unwise, but men cannot give birth. And essential truths like that really have to underpin all the sensitivity and flexibility the NHS should show.
Would you think as well, this is in my view, and I've spoken to many trans people, they would say, many of them said that they have a mental health condition. That is trans people that I've spoken to, and I could name some of them if you really want that, but that's my view, that's their view. A lot of people share that. I'm surprised the NHS aren't sort of looking after that side of it and the mental health of these people, rather than saying, oh, you can go on to a female ward. It just seems like madness. A trans woman is a biological man. There is a biological difference. And it's surely in a hospital, biology matters.
Yeah, absolutely does. It absolutely does. And when you start looking at maternity services, removing the word woman from any literature...
Ridiculous.
Then you have to wonder what on earth is going on. And Peter's right, it isn't every single hospital trust, but there are some, and these are big institutions who are suggesting that, people with ovaries. Well, OK, well, women, why don't we just say it? Why are we so afraid of this? And I think the NHS has got to the point where it is forgetting it is there to treat people. It is not there to have some kind of political ideology. And I'm really supportive. I think Victoria Atkins is fantastic. I think she's doing a really good job with this by saying, just cut the nonsense, treat people with respect, and nobody wants trans people to feel that they can't get treated in hospital at all. Absolutely not. Everybody needs to be treated with respect. But to really dumb down the fact that women can't be seen, women can't be heard, and they can't have their own departments for varying different illnesses which only apply to a female, then I think that's where we've gone wrong. But absolutely awfully wrong when you disabuse the public of the word woman.
Well, also, there's no real evidence that trans people have been treated badly in hospitals anyway. It's not that that is the case. Usually you go to hospital, you're treated as a person, as a human being, and maybe the staff member might not be as nice to you as they could be or whatever, but it's not, it wouldn't be because you're trans or something like that. I don't know whether that is a thing. So I kind of think that we put these obstacles and imagine, oh, somebody who's trans will be treated badly in hospital, so we need to make a special provision for... No, you don't. Somebody who's trans should be treated the same way as somebody who isn't. A human being is a human being, but biology matters in a hospital, and that is that. It's really simple.
Biology matters, but I think we all have to accept that the health service is political to a certain extent because, one, it's spending taxpayer cash.
Well, it's not political. That doesn't mean it's political.
But let me... It's serious, but spending taxpayer cash involves political choices because it's who you help, and obviously people running the NHS want to help everyone, but you have to deliver... You have to identify priorities and then deliver on them. So I think the NHS is political, and we just have to...
But not at ward level.
No, it shouldn't be ward level, absolutely.
You know, obviously, with the... at the top level where you've got the head of the NHS, Amanda Pritchard, head of NHS England, and people like that, that is the political angle of it. That's the political arm of it. But on the wards, this isn't politics. This is just treating people and being real about biology, and biology matters.
Biology matters, but how you spend taxpayers' money, I think, is a political decision. And that's why I think it's good that NHS trusts try to be on the front foot. And think about, I'd imagine, I haven't been a patient and I'm not a health specialist, but think about prostate cancer. Black men have had much worse outcomes from prostate cancer and a much higher incidence of prostate cancer. So that's an area where you want an NHS trust to be proactive in identifying people at risk. So I think there are political choices every time you spend £1 of taxpayers' money.
Well, I don't really see what that's got to do with it. I'm a bit confused as to why that feels like a curveball.
I don't think it needs to be political, and I think your point is right, that on the front line, you are there to treat individuals. It doesn't matter where they come from, who they are, what colour they are, what gender they are. That's what they're there to be treated, and you shouldn't have any of that nonsense coming in that you can't say someone's a woman. Absolutely not.
Well, thank goodness. And yes, it's a win, but we shouldn't have to be thinking about a win on that because it should be pretty obvious. Yeah. I find it absurd that it was even a thing that you would be questioning whether somebody who's a man biologically should be sharing a ward on a female ward. It just doesn't make any sense. But if you just tuned in, welcome on board. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is migration good for the economy? Stay tuned as well. My monologue is on the way. But next up, it's the weather with Marco. I can't even read that. They're helping me, but it's not helpful. Thank you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days we hold on to rather unsettled weather conditions across the UK, but we will also see a gradual rise in temperature. Low pressure's on the scene at the moment, and it's this weather front towards the northeast of the UK that's bringing some outbreaks of quite persistent rain, coupled with quite tightly packed isobars, so quite a blustery feel to the weather as well. And we do hold on to outbreaks of rain across the far northeast of Scotland heading into the overnight period. Elsewhere there'll be some clear spells for a time, but the showers out towards the west and southwest certainly do gather into the early hours of Monday, turning quite heavy and becoming more organised by the morning on Monday itself. Could see a touch of frost in one or two very sheltered spots, but on the whole it's a frost-free night. And then into Monday we'll see an east-west split, much as we did on Sunday, but this time it's the east seeing the best of the weather. Out towards the east and southeast of the UK, here we'll see some sunshine at times and mostly dry weather. Whereas out towards the west, quite a few showers from the word go. They become more widespread and quite heavy at times here, also affecting other northern areas as we head into the afternoon. In the best of the sunshine, it will be warmer than on Sunday, particularly towards the southeast, highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, nearer 12 to 14 degrees towards the north, which is close to the seasonal average. As for Tuesday, well, again, it's the east that will fare best, with the best of the dry and bright weather at times. Whereas out towards the west, a good rash of showers, those showers merging to longer spells of rain at times. It does stay fairly unsettled during the week ahead, with showers at times, but notice those temperatures also rising into the high teens or low 20s.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You're watching and listening to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Do not go anywhere because more is to come in the next hour. I'm going to start with my thoughts on the changing of the leaders of our main parties, in particular the Conservative Party. Surely not again.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday the 2nd of May...
The people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
We'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday the 2nd of May at midnight on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock. Hello and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. For my monologue, think Rishi Sunak. Do you think he should be replaced? It could be worse.
Of modern Britain, in all its diversity, compassion and strength that was shared around the globe. And it said something about us.
I love that. Then at 5, this week's outside guest. Now, she's appeared in X on the Beach, signed by Katie Price and Celebrity Big Brother. Who is she? You'll find out at 5. Then before we get started on all of that, though, let's get your latest news with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. 1 minute past 4, our top stories. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting says Dr Dan Poulter has not been offered a peerage to defect from the Tory party to Labour. Mr Streeting is defending Dr Poulter's decision, saying it shows only Sir Keir Starmer can be trusted with the NHS. Dr Poulter says he'll sit on the Labour benches until the general election and then stand down. It comes just days before local elections across England and Wales, and the PM refusing to rule out again this morning a general election in July, where Streeting says Dr Poulter defected to save the NHS.
There will be millions of people, disaffected Conservative voters like Dan Poulter out there, who can see the chaos in the Conservative Party, see the failure to deliver, and are looking at the alternative. And I'd ask those people to trust the doctor, who's seen the Conservative Party up close, has seen the changed Labour Party of Keir Starmer up close, and has decided that ultimately we need a Labour government in this country to get our NHS back on its feet, to turn the economy around and to make sure that we can look to the future with hope and optimism again.
Well, Policing Minister Chris Philp is defending the government's handling of the NHS and pointing to record levels of spending.
Just in the last year alone, the NHS has grown by 68,000 staff, and there are today 7,000 more doctors and 21,000 more nurses than there were a year ago. And tens of thousands of people each year are fleeing the Welsh-run the Labour-run NHS in Wales to have treatment in England. The waiting lists, the proportion of the public who are on either very long waiting lists or indeed the proportion of the public in Wales on a waiting list at all is higher, materially higher than it is in England. So on any measure, the Labour Party are doing a terrible job.
Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick is calling for a cap on net migration, saying it's the only way to restore voters' trust. Mr Jenrick says he wants a far more restrictive system, allowing less than 100,000 people a year. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, he said the government's recently passed Rwanda bill will, quote, join the graveyard of policies that failed to tackle illegal migration.
The last 30 years, politicians of all stripes have promised controlled and reduced immigration only to deliver the opposite. And the public are rightly furious at what's happened. It's placed immense strain on housing, on public services, on community cohesion, and it hasn't improved the economy. What we're proposing is that we return to the tens of thousands, but unlike previously, we have a cap. So Parliament itself votes for a democratic lock, so the public can have a degree of confidence, which they don't have today, that when politicians say these things, they mean it.
Meanwhile, more than 900 Channel migrants have crossed illegally to the United Kingdom in less than a week. That's according to the latest Home Office figures. 359 crossed in 8 small boats yesterday. GB News captured this exclusive footage of 51 migrants who had to be rescued after their small boat ran aground on a sandbank off the Kent coast. Northern Ireland's First Minister has called for a thought-out response to people who seek asylum in Ireland after travelling from the UK. The Irish government's claiming that there's been a shift in migration patterns, with migrants crossing into Ireland from Northern Ireland, higher than 80%. The comments come as Rishi Sunak said that shows the deterrent effect of his Rwanda plan is working because people are worried about coming here. The Alba Party MSP, whose vote could be crucial to save Scotland's First Minister, says it's time to build relationships. Ash Regan hasn't confirmed how she'll vote in the motions of no confidence at Holyrood, but says the price of her support will be higher if Humza Yousaf differs. Meanwhile, Yousaf is asking leaders of rival parties to find common ground after the collapse of the SNP's power-sharing deal with the Greens. And finally, the Duke of Sussex is returning to the UK in just over a week to attend a ceremony marking the 10th anniversary of his Invictus Games. It'll be the first time that Prince Harry is back in the country since the King's cancer diagnosis in February. He'll be at the Thanksgiving service at St Paul's Cathedral on May the 8th and is expected to provide a reading at that event. For all our top stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Oh, God. Let's go round again, panel.
Maybe we'll turn back the hands of time. Let's go round again. One more time.
No.
One more time.
God, one more time. Oh, God, listen, there's talk of the Conservative Party changing leader before the next general election, which is rumoured to be soon. But this Tory tenure has been like a carousel. Since David Cameron, who ran away after he didn't get what he wanted over Brexit, we've had Theresa May, who did a disastrous job running back and forth around EU leaders in her kitten heels. How can we forget her dancing at that ill-fated conference where she lost her voice and the letters fell off the wall behind her? I mean, that says it all. Then someone even handed her a P45. Oh, God. But since the last election won by Boris Johnson on the premise of getting Brexit done, although some would argue the British people were done with this current tepid version of it, Boris, who gave them a stonking 80-seat majority, was ousted. They, the Tory party, decided they could do better, and what followed can only be described as a 6-week comedy carousel, a farce in which Liz Truss, voted in by the members, was hounded out in what I believe was a plot to instil their man, Rishi Sunak. Liz sadly lasted just 49 days, outlived by a lettuce, despite her being the party member's choice. Rishi then took over. There was literally no point, actually, for them, this whole leadership election, in my view. They were going to put him in anyway. But it hasn't worked out, has it? Because they did not understand the electorate and why Boris had such a fan base and was such a hit. Charisma, which none of them have. But the changing of the guard has been the general gist of this government. Let's take a look at the Home Secretaries, OK? So throughout the last 13 years of Tory rule, previous holders of this role include Theresa May, MP, for 6 years, Amber Rudd for 2 and Sajid Javid for just 1. Now, that was over 9 years. But since the last election we've had, Priti Patel in 2019 to 22, we've had Suella Braverman, Casey, by the way, don't you know, 2022. And in the same year, Grant Shapps. And then back to Suella Braverman again. And now, have I missed anybody? It's James Cleverly. I can't keep up. And what about health secretaries? After taking over from Jeremy Hunt, Matt Hancock was health secretary under Boris Johnson. Since then, well, they've had pretty much 4 in 1 year. That was Sajid Javid from 2021 to 22, Steve Barclay in 2022, Therese Coffey in 2022, then back to Steve Barclay in the same year, and now it's Victoria Atkins. I mean, no wonder the NHS is in such a mess. Please, no more unelected prime ministers. We're fed up of it. They've turned the UK and indeed themselves into a laughingstock. The Tory party have made their bed, they must lie in it. Come on, sing along, panel. Oh, let's go round again. Let's go round again. Let's go round again. One more time.
No.
Please, no, not one more time. You can't get anything done if you keep moving people from job to job. It's just like moving the deck chairs, sadly, on the Titanic. It's irresponsible and likely to put off existing and potential voters. Please stop. The British people deserve better. Just get on with the job and let us decide at a general election. I forgot they were doing it again. Listen, before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. As former Immigration Minister Rob Jenrick tells Camilla Tominey, high levels of immigration are putting a strain on the economy, housing, public services and community cohesion. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you believe that mass migration is good for the economy? Then at 4:50, it's World View. We'll cross live to Los Angeles to speak to Paul Duttridge, host of the Politics People podcast on what's going on in the States. Plus, we'll get an update from Israel with Uri Geller. At 5, it's my outside guest. Now, she's a mystery. She appeared in X on the Beach, signed by Katie Price, and Celebrity Big Brother. Those are some of the clues. More will be on the way. That is coming up in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Get in touch. gbnews.com/your say or tweet me at GBNews. Right, before we get started and speak to the panel, joining me now for an update on the leadership and everything else is GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. Olivia, thank you so much for joining me. Now, we have had news, potentially, that Penny Mordaunt could be someone that they may try and put in place for the leadership. Are these rumours or is there some substance to them?
Well, for a while now, there's been a core, small group of rebel Conservative MPs, about 15 or 20, who think that the only way for the Conservatives to avoid a complete, unmitigated disaster in the general election is to get rid of Rishi Sunak before the general election and install someone like Penny Mordaunt. Now, they haven't really been able to garner much traction among the wider parliamentary party over the past 5 months or so. Most people in the party think that, yes, Rishi Sunak is doing badly in the polls, but the idea of installing another Conservative leader, the, 4th or 5th in as many years, would make the party look completely farcical. Now, though, these rebels think that they might be on the verge of making it big in the wider Conservative Party. Why? Because there has been this defection. Dan Poulter MP has defected to the Labour Party, and that obviously lowers morale on the government benches and means that the rebels have a bit of a cause. It adds fuel to their fire, if you like. So I think over the next few weeks we can expect to see those rebels whispering around on the backbenches, encouraging other backbenchers into the tea rooms with them and trying to persuade them to back this plan to get rid of Sunak and install Mordaunt. Personally, I don't think it's going to work. It is just possible that if the local election results next week are as disastrous as is predicted, there could be some more letters of no confidence sent in about Rishi Sunak. It could even reach the 52 letter mark, which would trigger that vote of no confidence. But I think it is very likely that even in those circumstances, Sunak would win. And the idea which rebels seem to have that Sunak would stand aside if it got to the point of a vote of no confidence, even if he were to win it, I don't think is right. Rishi Sunak has been implementing policies over the last few weeks, the Rwanda policy, for example, his plans for the economy, which he thinks are going to come to fruition later in the year. He wants to see this out to the bitter end. Why would he stand aside before the flights to Rwanda have even taken off after putting so much effort into that policy plan? So my instinct is that Rishi Sunak will cling on, but I think over the next few weeks we will hear a lot more talk about Penny Mordaunt, and possibly we could see a few more rebels coming out of the woodwork and showing their true colours.
Olivia Utley, thank you very much. Rishi Sunak's not going anywhere. I can't see him doing that. Thank you very much, Olivia. She's GB News political correspondent. Right, let's welcome again to my panel, political commentator Christine Hamilton. That's a bit posh, you're not really, are you?
Very posh, yes, I'll go with that.
That's not what you're normally,
That's too posh for me.
She's an author and broadcaster.
I'm a housewife.
And a housewife, we'll add that in. And also Danny Kelly, author and journalist. So, Christine...
I'm not an author.
Are you not?
Well,
you
look,
did
we'll
write
go
a 16-page book.
I
remembered that.
20 years ago, I wrote a cookbook, and it was a pamphlet of basic
What is the
food.
What's the difference between a pamphlet? Is just a thin little thing.
Yeah, it's just
a bit like the author.
How to lose
thin
weight?
little thing.
Was it how to lose
Beg your
weight?
pardon? No, it was to do with putting weight on. Food, cookbooks.
Of course, it was about food, Christine.
It wasn't a diet.
No, but you get cookbooks for people who want to lose weight. Cookbooks for people who want to put it on.
It wasn't.
It wasn't. It was all stodgy, calorie-laden stuff.
Right.
Bring us one next week.
Yeah, we'd love that.
Is that a print?
Yes.
Right, Christine.
Yes.
What do you think of this? Another carousel, another potential leader. Even the fact that they're talking about it, I'm concerned.
I find it completely astonishing that they're even talking about it. It shows how desperate they are. You mentioned how many, I think you said how many Home Secretaries we've had. Do you know, we have had 10 Education Secretaries in the last
13 years. I was going to do them
I mean, you won't even remember half of them. I mean, it is just mind-boggling, all these revolving doors. Some of them, of course, have been forced on whoever the Prime Minister was at the time, because people resign, etc. But, I mean, it's an absolute nonsense. People need time to get into... It's no wonder that some of these great departments of state are in a mess. People need time to get into their job. You can't suddenly be thrown into defence or education or Home Office.
Well, also, what do you know if you're crossing different platforms? So, how much do you actually know?
Yeah.
You know, Therese Coffey, what does she know about health? I don't know.
I think we've had enough Tory leaders for a while.
I think so.
I think that's my last word on the subject.
When they ousted Boris Johnson, it's so obvious now, but just looking back, they should never have got rid of Boris Johnson.
I knew that. No, of course not.
But what they didn't know, when they all felt this moral virtue to oust Boris Johnson and to give him a no confidence, what they didn't realise, all these Conservatives at the time, is that basically they were scuppering the party. They didn't know this at the time.
No, they should have known, though. I knew, you knew, most people watching knew.
Reform gained traction, a hell of a lot of traction in the last, say, 12 months, 14 months, something like that. Reform are going to basically scupper the whole Tory party. You know, Labour are going to have a landslide because Reform is an alternative to Conservatives. That alternative wouldn't have been there had Boris Johnson remained at the helm. It may have been there, but it would have been much more of a fringe alternative. And, you know, they are turkeys and they're voted for Christmas and they've been gobbled up and that's where they are. You need someone charismatic. You know, he can charm the birds from the trees, Boris Johnson, and that was part of a personality. And people who hate Boris Johnson, they say, well, it's not about personality.
Well, it is, I'm afraid.
But I'm afraid it is.
It is.
It
well,
is.
A lot of it is.
Yes, you're so real.
OK, we all know what his bad points are. Let's not list them, but the charisma
He's a people person.
Really outweighed all that in mind. Why could they do with it now?
Well, they really could. Listen, what do you think at home at gbnews.com/your say? This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, Worldview. We'll cross live to Los Angeles. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you believe that mass migration is good for the economy? I've got a poll up on X right now asking you that very question. Get in touch right now, gbnews.com/your say.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
And I did want to give you a platform, but I also want to give you an opportunity to apologise to anyone that you might hurt, and also give a message now to people who might want to copy some of the things that you've done, because people have copied it. So is there anything you'd like to say about that?
So the first thing you addressed, yeah, I do want to say sorry, because I did say sorry in the BBC interview, and that's the only thing they put out as a clip. So I don't know why they tried to do that, but I'll say it again on GB News here. I apologise to all the victims in the past that may have caused distress to, may have harassed, may have mentally tormented in any type of way. I apologise to them because I didn't mean to do that, and I was just having fun at the moment, but I didn't realise that it would have negative repercussions and negative effects on their psychological, way of thinking. So I apologise for that. And also, the one thing I have to say to young people is social media isn't real. What I've portrayed to the guys on the internet is that I'm this cool, I don't give a toss about anything. But me as a person, I really do care. And for people I don't really read comments on the internet, because if I was to do that, I would probably go into a depressive state. All I can say to you guys is believe in yourself, and there's bigger things you can do out there than just being an absolute menace on the internet or being antisocial. If you have ambitions, I like to read, I like music. I want to go deeper into my passion so I understand me as a person and not what other people think I am.
You are an articulate young man. You are obviously intelligent as well when you talk like this. And I really hope, for your sake and for the sake of a lot of people who did take a negative influence from what you did initially, that you really don't go back down that route.
I have a child as well, and I have to be there, not just for me, but for my child, for my child's mother, for my mother. I have to be there for a lot of people. It's not just me. So I need to put in the work.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's just coming out to 21 minutes after 4 o'clock. Welcome. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel, and it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, do you believe that mass migration is good for the economy? Now, earlier, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick told Camilla Tominey that it's taking its toll on the country.
The last 30 years, politicians of all stripes have promised controlled and reduced immigration only to deliver the opposite. And the public are rightly furious at what's happened. It's placed immense strain on housing, on public services, on community cohesion, and it hasn't improved the economy. What we're proposing is that we return to the tens of thousands, but unlike previously, we have a cap. So Parliament itself votes for a democratic lock, so the public can have a degree of confidence, which they don't have today, that when politicians say these things, they mean it.
It's a shame that you actually need to do that, though, isn't it? They should be able to have an actual number. I don't think that's an issue. I'm just wondering why. Every target they've missed anyway. But the latest official estimates show that net migration in the year June 2023 was 672,000, and it's projected that the UK population could go up by a massive 6.6 million by 2036. I mean, can we sustain that? We haven't even got enough houses and everything else for the people who are here. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you believe that mass migration is good for the economy? Joining me now is former Sunday Mirror editor Paul Connew, the research director at the Centre for Migration Control, Robert Bates, Professor Azim Ibrahim, author and academic, and also my panellists, Peter Edward and also Claire Pearsall. OK, right, I'm going to start with you. Professor Azim Ibrahim, what are your thoughts on this? Mass migration, is it a benefit? Is it a net benefit?
I think Robert Jenrick is absolutely right. You know, we really do need a cap on this. Migration is very good for the country, but only when it's controlled migration, not mass migration when you've lost control of your borders. You know, one of the reasons why the United States, the world's largest economy, has been so successful is simply because they've had a secret weapon, which was the H-1B visa, which is also known as the genius visa for people of very high skills, extraordinary skills, which they have basically brought into the country. We are unable to implement a policy like this simply because we've lost control of our borders. We have no control of who comes into the country and who stays here. And then as we enter the age of migration, this is only going to be exacerbated. We really need to get a control of our borders so we can implement a more intelligent migration policy that's actually going to benefit the economy.
Well, Robert Bates, now, a lot of people talk as though we need all the more migration. We keep hearing we need more migration, because we need people to do the jobs that the British people won't do, apparently. Is this true?
No, it's not true. And the key example of that would be the healthcare sector, which we're constantly told would absolutely collapse just because young Brits aren't going into the profession. If you actually look at the data on the UCAS website, UCAS reports, you see that the number of Brits that are actually applying to do those roles that we're told, you know, just would be left vacant if it wasn't for mass migration. There's thousands of people that are applying every single year and just being turned down. So we have the capacity already here to meet these needs, but that would obviously require investment. It would require training, and that's something that the British economy just doesn't seem to be geared towards doing at the moment, providing, because it has been weaned over the last 30 years onto cheap overseas labour.
A lot of people voted Brexit because, and I was one of them, I didn't like the fact that it felt like the wages were being pulled down because of mass migration. That was my thoughts on it. Paul, do you think, looking at this, that Robert Jenrick is right, that we do need to actually have a cap on numbers?
Sensible migration policy, of course, but Rishi Sunak is betting the farm, as the Americans say, in his re-election hopes, faint though they are, on his Rwanda policy, which is a gimmick. And funnily enough, the last Office of National Statistics survey put immigration at number 7 on the public's priorities, well below the cost of living, the NHS and social care, climate change and housing. So I don't think that Rishi Sunak can actually bear too much hope that Rwanda is going to actually stem the slump in the opinion polls and turn the electoral tide. Of course we need migration. No one supports, in fact, gangs sending people across on dinghies, but we haven't got a coherent immigration policy. And also, we do need migration in many fields. We're an ageing population, like it or not, and much of the care sectors and in the NHS and other areas too, you know, rely on migration. Yeah, but of course, the problem with migration, you also need, which Labour at least have seized onto, you need a better housing policy, because people in many ways are less concerned about migration, other than the fact that it plays into a housing crisis. So you need to square that circle.
Well, but Paul, what you said about Rwanda, though, a lot of people are saying that it's starting to work because there are elements of it that appear to be working. I'll get Claire Pearsall to just respond to that, because Claire, what do you think about what Paul is saying?
Part of what Paul is saying is right, that you need a coherent migration strategy, and you need to understand where your need for workers is coming from, how many you need, and how long you need them for. And we've been there before when we've had a cap of the tens of thousands, and it didn't work, especially when you looked at the healthcare sector. You reached the limit on the number of people that could come in, and the health service was absolutely crying out for people. So you need to look at the flex that you have within your own system, and can you do it? Now, the government hasn't really understood what it wants its immigration system to be. And I think that we all are in danger of conflating legal migration
into those coming over illegally. And they are very, very different things. They are very different problems to sort. Now, the Rwanda plan, on the one hand, could well be a deterrent. We don't know because the planes haven't taken off. Now, I doubt it, and I've always been consistent on this. I don't think it's going to work. It doesn't have the capacity in order to make a difference.
But it's not about the capacity, is it? It's the deterrent effect.
But it is about the capacity, because if you are only looking at a 1 in 25 or a 1 in 50 chance of being sent there, then you're still going to make that journey.
Well, it's a starter, though, isn't it? And actually, it's not. It's going to be one of the solutions. I mean, after all, where do you send somebody who doesn't appear to have anywhere else to go if they fail your migration, your asylum process? Peter Edwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to keep immigration and asylum separate. But Robert Jenrick, the former immigration minister, is essentially running a campaign to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. So that's one of the reasons why he's talking about this, and one of the reasons why he did a heavily photographed trip to Texas. In terms of the actual policy of the British economy, however people feel about it, and there's a completely legitimate question about pressure on public services, school places, house building, doctors' waiting lists, and so on, the British economy is reliant on immigrant labour.
I don't know. No, it isn't. I mean, the British economy, I don't believe that, Peter Edwards. There's more British people working than people who come in from other countries to do those jobs. So I think that's a bit of a stretch to say that this country is reliant fully. I mean, do you feel perhaps...
Not fully, but heavily.
Sorry? Yeah, go on.
I said not fully, but heavily. We can't actually produce enough doctors. I mean, it's harder to get into medical school now, even with the right grades. So we're cutting back on medical school places, and yet we have on the far right people arguing in fact, we just need British doctors.
Well, hold on a minute. You're talking about the far right as if that's not quite true, is it? Because you think about it, right? You're going somewhere like Africa. You're going to take the doctors from Africa. Is that better? Are you thinking that that's a morally better position than insisting that British people do the jobs? It's not really, is it?
Morally, probably not. But if we're talking in terms of British politics, I mean, Dan Poulter's resignation, yesterday, or defection to Labour, I had a message from one Tory MP who's quite largely pro-Sunak, but saying that Poulter's defection is a disaster for the Tory party, and that combined with a disastrous local election results next Thursday will actually certainly spark another challenge to Rishi Sunak.
Well, we'll see. We'll see about that. But I want to get a zoom in on this mass migration because I often hear that people say that the far right and this and that, and we should be taking doctors from other countries. Surely that's worse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a multi-pronged problem. One of the reasons why we're importing such low-level skills people is that we have a population of our own that's basically many of them are unwilling and unable to work for a wide variety of reasons. In my home city, for example, in Glasgow, you have 19% of the working age population that are out of work. In other cities in the United Kingdom, like Blackpool, the percentage is much higher, around 25%. And the cost of this to the economy is just so substantial. So this is a multi-pronged problem, is that those low-level skill jobs in the care sector and the health sector, the local population is just unwilling and, to undertake them. So we have to sort that out from that front. We also have to have full reform of the health and social sector. There's just no other way around this. So this isn't just about migration. We're simply importing migrants because the local population is just not willing to do a lot of these jobs.
Well, Robert, it does seem that the bottom line is the net benefit isn't really working out, because it ends up that in the end, even though we think we're helping ourselves, at the end of the day, they're not a net benefit. Robert, your final thoughts?
Yes, and under this Conservative government, the immigration system has shifted overwhelmingly towards being made up of non-EEA migrants that official studies, the Migration Advisory Committee's own studies show are a net cost. The idea that migration that we're talking about is just doctors and it's just, highly skilled chemical engineers and things like that just isn't the case. It's low skill, low value, no real contribution, no boost to productivity, anything like that.
Right, so final word, yes or no from each of you. Do you believe mass migration is good for the economy, yes or no? Paul Connew.
What do you mean by mass migration? Controlled legal
yes or no.
migration, yes, which is what Keir Starmer is
no, we haven't got
arguing
time, so
for.
we're going to the news, so I just want a quick yes or no, if you can. So you're not sure. You're Robert Bates, yes or no? Is it good or bad? No. Claire Pissell, yes or no? Good or bad?
No.
Peter Edwards?
If you cut migration, the economy will be smaller.
That's not...
It's not a yes or no.
Azim. And final word to Azim, yes or no? It's not good.
No, absolutely not. It has to be controlled migration.
Right, listen, thank you so much for all of your thoughts. Lovely to get you all on. Thank you so much. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate. I'm asking, do you believe mass migration is good for the economy? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel. Still to come, outside, we talk highs, lows and lessons learned. I've got a mystery guest. She appeared on X on the Beach, signed by Katie Price and Celebrity Big Brother. Who is she first, though? Let's get your latest news with Ray.
Thanks, Nana. 4:33. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting says Dr Dan Poulter has not been offered a peerage to defect from the Tory party to Labour. Mr Streeting is defending Dr Poulter's decision, saying it shows that only Sir Keir Starmer can be trusted with the NHS. Dr Poulter says he'll sit on the Labour benches until the next general election and then stand down. It comes just days before local elections across England and Wales, and the PM refusing once again today to rule out a general election in July. Well, meanwhile, Labour says Rishi Sunak needs to wake up and realise that his migration plan is not working. That's after Home Office figures show that more than 7,000 people have arrived illegally by small boats so far this year. Labour's shadow immigration minister, Stephen Kinnock, says his party will crush the smuggling gangs and make sure, quote, that those with no right to be in the UK are swiftly returned. Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick is calling for a cap on net migration, saying it's the only way to restore voters' trust. Mr Jenrick says he wants a far more restrictive system, allowing less than 100,000 people a year. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, he said the government's recently passed Rwanda bill will, quote, join the graveyard of policies that failed to tackle illegal migration. The Alba Party MSP, whose vote could be crucial to save Scotland's First Minister, says it's time to build relationships. Ash Regan hasn't confirmed how she'll vote in the motions of no confidence at Holyrood, but says the price of her support will be higher as Humza Yousaf, quote, divers. Yousaf is asking leaders of rival parties to find common ground after the collapse of the SNP's power-sharing deal with the Greens. Right, for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts. You can scan the QR code on your screen now or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the quaint Derbyshire village of Sudbury, there's a storm brewing between the local football club and the National Trust. This grass field might seem unremarkable, but for hundreds of years it's been part of the Sudbury Hall estate, playing host to the village football and cricket matches. Now the National Trust are planning to put an end to that tradition in the name of biodiversity, with plans for trees and plants where the football club play. Some worry it breaks a memorandum of wishes from the late Lord Vernon, whose family have lived here since 1660. Manager of Sudbury FC Tom Crutchley says he's upset at the decision.
Naturally disappointed. We've been here, this is our 9th year. We've put a lot of effort into here to keep playing, to maintain it. I'm from the village originally, so personally it was, it is very upsetting.
MP for Derbyshire Dale Sarah Dines says the National Trust aren't respecting the history of the site.
I feel they're trampling over the wishes of historic owners who gave up this wonderful site for the nation. And for over 100 years, people have played football and cricket here. It's incredibly sad. incredibly sad. And it's against the wishes of a lot of people locally who've written to me from the village.
Sudbury Hall lives under the branding of the Children's Country House, a decision which Dine says is disrespectful to the history of the estate.
I mean, this is fake to make it into a children's theme park. It's almost a reimagining, and in fact, that's the very words it says on their website. The house is reopened, it's been reimagined. I don't want our heritage to be reimagined. I think the National Trust has been captured by people who have different ideas than most people in this country.
Whilst the public will still be able to roam these historic grounds, the village feels like a legacy is being snatched away. Jack Carson, GB News, Sudbury.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday, the 2nd of May,
The people decide.
as the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections, we'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
With the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday, the 2nd of May at midnight on GB News.
Welcome back. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Let's continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, do you believe that mass migration is good for the economy? Well, let's speak to my panel on that. So I'm going to ask Danny Kelly, Christine Hamilton, is it good for the economy? Christine Hamilton.
Well, it's good and bad. I mean, people go on about there are jobs that immigrants do that we won't do. Well, frankly, there are so many people sitting around on their backsides getting benefits. They should jolly well be made to do these jobs. If we got more of our people back to work, some people seem to think that COVID is still going on and they can't work. But no, I mean, GDP has gone down in recent years, whereas if the immigrants were really good for the economy, it would have gone up. So no, I think obviously in certain sectors, I mean, for example, the higher education sector would be decimated if they didn't have foreign students in our universities. But then the counter side of that is we've probably got too many universities anyway offering ridiculous degrees, so let's cut back the sector. So no, on balance, I don't think they're good for the economy. No, in the round.
Back in 2011, David Cameron said he wants to get a grip on net migration. Well, he actually said the tens of thousands back in 2011, and look where we are now. Is it good for the economy? Well, the answer to that is that do we benefit in a net financial way?
I think the answer is not really.
Well, that's the end. If we don't, then it's not good for the economy.
And I think the issue is as well, we end up with not the wrong kind of migrants, but the wrong kind of immigration. So it's low skill. They're not contributing heavily in tax, to the economy. And then often they will bring lots of family members. So the net benefit is low. What we need to do, in my view, is we need to change ourselves into a sort of more high-skill economy where we start to bring in migrants from jobs that we actually really need, high-skilled.
And don't forget, we've had an influx, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers. I think that's the collective now for people from Hong Kong.
Is it? I don't know.
And since Brexit also, we've managed to control immigration from lots of Indians are coming over to fill high-paid managerial jobs where I am in the Midlands. Great people, but we're in control of it.
Yeah, well, that's what we wanted with Brexit, but unfortunately we sort of lost control of something that we could control. But you've heard that migrants have been heading to Ireland after hearing about the government's Rwanda plan, which was passed in Parliament. Rishi Sunak says that means his policy is working as a deterrent, but Ireland isn't happy about the residents and have been protesting about their government's asylum policies. Well, let's have a quick chat, because joining me now is Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie. Doogie, briefly, tell me, what's going on then? Because Rishi is saying his plan is working, but it doesn't seem to be working for those in Ireland.
No, definitely not, and we've covered this for the last couple of years. Of course that was going to happen. We're part of the common travel area, so, immigrants can either come into Ireland, go through Northern Ireland and straight back into the UK, or the other way round. And over the last couple of days we've seen a beautiful village called Newtown Mount Kennedy in Wicklow. and middle-class people, average price of houses there about £300,000, have been set upon by the Garda Síochána, the police force of the Republic of Ireland, with pepper spray and riot shields because they were protesting about an immigrant centre coming into their area, and those people are still protesting now. But it has inspired Simon Harris, because that was a very bad mistake, and Simon Harris, the Taoiseach, has now said today that he will be trying to put through legislation so as they can send those that came from the UK back. And number two, he is calling for greater cooperation with the PSNI. And joining me now is Herman Kelly of the Irish Freedom Party. Herman, do tell me, is he right in what he said?
Simon Harris is an absolute disaster. Look, our problem in Ireland is there's no political will to send these people back. Roughly 250,000 people come in every year now, and he's done nothing. Look, when the Common Travel Area, what do you call him, Leo Varadkar made a huge mistake when he antagonised Britain. The Taoiseach before him, Enda Kenny, wanted bilateral negotiations to discuss what happened in relationship with the border between Ireland and Britain. He unnecessarily antagonised Britain, led to very bad relations, the worst they've been probably pre-Good Friday Agreement. But Simon Harris, look, 79% of the people in Ireland currently believe that there's far too much immigration into Ireland. And talking about Ireland being made unsafe, well, in 2022, 12 women were murdered, 5 of them were murdered by non-nationals.
So there you go. I mean, really, that is where it stands in Ireland. And of course, the European elections are coming up here, and that will tell a tale.
Thank you very much, Doogie. That's Doogie Peters there, speaking with regard. Well, listen, let's quickly find out what the great British voices think, because this show's nothing without them and their views. Let's welcome one of them on. This is their opportunity to tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. John Reid in Kidderminster. John, is mass migration good or bad? What do you think?
I think mass migration, legal migration, Nana, is a good thing. Right. But that means we can pick and choose who we let in, doesn't it? I think mass illegal immigration, the like of which we see coming across the channel, is ridiculous. And I don't really understand why it isn't easily stopped. I noticed yesterday that a knife was taken to an inflatable on the beach and the boat therefore couldn't sail. And I don't see why we don't do that all the time. Either us or the police or anybody else. Why are the boats allowed to move? I mean, you don't move 50 people in a great big inflatable in a couple of minutes, do you? They must come from somewhere, and they must all get their jackets on. So mass illegal immigration, I'd be 100% to stopping. But I think we've got room in our economy for people to fill the gaps of the jobs that the British and what don't want to do.
Well, we need to get on with it. John Reid, thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you. What do you think at home? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. Coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate in the next hour. I'm asking, do you trust Sir Keir Starmer next worldview? I'll speak to Paul Duddridge and Uri Geller. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, we hold on to rather unsettled weather conditions across the UK, but we will also see a gradual rise in temperature. Low pressure's on the scene at the moment, and it's this weather front towards the northeast of the UK that's bringing some outbreaks of quite persistent rain, coupled with quite tightly packed isobars, so quite a blustery feel to the weather as well. And we do hold on to outbreaks of rain across the far northeast of Scotland, heading into the overnight period. Elsewhere, there'll be some clear spells for a time, but the showers out towards the west and southwest certainly do gather into the early hours of Monday, turning quite heavy and becoming more organised by the morning on Monday itself. Could see a touch of frost in one or two very sheltered spots, but on the whole, it's a frost-free night. And then into Monday, we'll see an east-west split, much as we did on Sunday, but this time it's the east seeing the best of the weather. Out towards the east and southeast of the UK, here we'll see some sunshine at times and mostly dry weather. Whereas out towards the west, quite a few showers from the word go. They become more widespread and quite heavy at times here, also affecting other northern areas as we head into the afternoon. In the best of the sunshine, it will be warmer than on Sunday, particularly towards the southeast, highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, nearer 12 to 14 degrees towards the north, which is close to the seasonal average. As for Tuesday, well, again, it's the east that will fare best, with the best of the dry and bright weather at times. Whereas out towards the west, a good rash of showers, those showers merging to longer spells of rain at times. It does stay fairly unsettled during the week ahead, with showers at times, but notice those temperatures also rising into the high teens or low 20s.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the people's channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time now for Worldview. I'm Nana Akua. Let's travel over to America and speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudderidge. Oh, Paul Dudderidge, what's going on with Israel, America? Then we've had all the pro-Palestine protests across the weekend as well. What is happening in the States?
Well, we've had a lot of the student sit-in rallies, Columbia notably. I think that you're seeing coverage of that. These seem to be very well organised, very vocal, vociferous and sometimes unruly protests happening across various universities and college campuses in the United States. That's for the Israel pro-Palestine angle. So that is pretty volatile stuff at the moment, and it's having an impact on poll ratings. But it's a bit of a curse upon both your houses, because where the Democrats traditionally would be picking up a lot of the under 30 voters in the polls because of the position. And it's fairly surprising me, I have to say, that you'd think that with the track record of the Biden administration, that they would be much more in tune with perhaps the more extreme wings of the Palestine supporters, but they seem to be holding the line and supporting Israel, and they're losing support as a result of that, as are the Republicans, I have to say. So it's not really aiding either party, but it's kind of interesting to witness.
So Madison Square Gardens, Trump is planning a rally, a major rally this.
Trump, see, look, so he's in court. We won't have to go on about the case because that's covered everywhere else. But he's in court and he's turning every single day into a press conference and building up support. So again, we're starting to see people go viral supporting Trump. You know, lots of construction workers, etc. There was one expletive deleted guy went viral this week supporting Trump. And so he's making New York, because this is where the trial is, he's making New York actually in play again. And he's, you know, he's aiming to win New York. And as such, he's going to hold a rally, he said, in Madison Square Garden. Now, he's floated this before, but now, since the support he's been receiving on his arrival at court every day, and the people are lining the streets, no matter what anybody tells you, people are lining the streets to support him. He's basically taking the game to New York. Okay, you're going to trap me here for 6 to 8 weeks. I'm going to campaign here for 6 to 8 weeks. And so Madison Square Garden, South Bronx, I think, is another location for him as well. But these are traditionally places that he should not be. I think he got 12% of the vote. So it's really, he's taking the game to them now.
Interesting. Paul Dudderidge, thank you so much. Paul Dudderidge, host of the Politics People podcast. Great to talk to you. Right, let's head over to Israel now and speak to Mr. Fire Uri Geller. Troops could be put on the ground in Israel, reportedly. Uri, what are your thoughts?
Okay, Nana, please allow me
to continue the conversation you just had. Look, Nana, never a week goes by without something to do with Israel or Gaza or the Jewish people. But today, I want to talk to you about a virus. There is a sickness which is spreading in America, and it seems to mainly affect young people. Sadly, Nana, there is no cure. And I'm worried that this sickness is going to spread to the UK. But the good news is that the symptoms of this sickness are easily identifiable. Let me tell you what the signs are. The virus incubates at expensive universities and is especially caught by ignorant young students. Unfortunately, this virus is highly contagious, but it's okay because the carriers like to stick together and live in tents on the campus grounds. Now, you will know if you have this virus. You know why? Because you will like to sing about rivers and seas, though you will not know why. And you will like to shout and scream. Here, we just spoke about this. This is unbelievable, because the most serious thing is you will become a full-blown racist, even though you pretended to be the exact opposite. Look, Nana, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? Yes, these crazy students who have hijacked campuses across America to protest against Israel. Now, let me tell you, nobody has a problem with criticizing Israel. In fact, here in Israel, we criticize the government all the time. But these idiotic students are intimidating Jewish students and making Israeli students and Israeli staff fear for their lives. These are exactly the same kind of ugly scenes we have seen on the streets of London every week since the 7th of October. And you know what, Nana? I'm worried. I'm worried that the same virus that has taken root in America is going to spread to universities in the UK too. Nana, the UK is ripe for it. The last thing I want to say, the UK is sitting back and letting it happen. The mayor of London is doing nothing, nada. The police are doing nothing, zero, Nana. What begins with words ends with violence, or worse. They need to uproot the protesters in America and stop the protests in London before it is too late. Do you agree with me?
Uri Geller, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I know what you're saying. I think people can see what's going on, but it's really good to have your thoughts. That is the brilliant Uri Geller, live from Tel Aviv. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. More still to come.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, we hold on to rather unsettled weather conditions across the UK, but we will also see a gradual rise in temperature. Low pressure is on the scene at the moment, and it's this weather front towards the northeast of the UK that's bringing some outbreaks of quite persistent rain, coupled with quite tightly packed isobars, so quite a blustery feel to the weather as well. And we do hold on to outbreaks of rain across the far northeast of Scotland, heading into the overnight period. Elsewhere, there'll be some clear spells for a time, but the showers out towards the west and southwest certainly do gather into the early hours of Monday, turning quite heavy and becoming more organised by the morning on Monday itself. Could see a touch of frost in one or two very sheltered spots, but on the whole, it's a frost-free night. And then into Monday, we'll see an east-west split, much as we did on Sunday, but this time it's the east seeing the best of the weather. Out towards the east and southeast of the UK, here we'll see some sunshine at times and mostly dry weather. Whereas out towards the west, quite a few showers from the word go. They become more widespread and quite heavy at times here, also affecting other northern areas as we head into the afternoon. In the best of the sunshine, it will be warmer than on Sunday, particularly towards the southeast, highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, nearer 12 to 14 degrees towards the north, which is close to the seasonal average. As for Tuesday, well, again, it's the east that will fare best, with the best of the dry and bright weather at times. Whereas out towards the west, a good rash of showers, those showers merging to longer spells of rain at times. It does stay fairly unsettled during the week ahead, with showers at times, but notice those temperatures also rising into the high teens or low 20s.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God, are you joking?
You're joking. Really? Seriously, it's not a wind-up, is it?
Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday the 2nd of May,
The people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
we'll take you through the night as the first results come in. And we'll pick up at breakfast
With the very best guests and analysis. And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday the 2nd of May at midnight on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. So, coming up, she's appeared in X on the Beach, signed by Katie Price and celebrity Big Brother. We'll talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the world on the outside of reality TV. Who is she? She'll be here live in a couple of moments' time. Then, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking Keir Starmer, do you trust him? Who knows? Loads of U-turns. Will he U-turn on his latest, the triple lock? But first, let's get your latest news with Ray Addison.
Good afternoon, it's me again. Our top stories this hour. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting says Dr Dan Poulter has not been offered a peerage to defect from the Tory party to Labour. Mr Streeting is defending Dr Poulter's decision, saying it shows that only Sir Keir Starmer can be trusted with the NHS. Dr Poulter says he'll sit on the Labour benches until the general election and then stand down. Comes just days before local elections across England and Wales, and the PM refusing once again this morning to rule out a general election in July. Wes Streeting says Dr Poulter defected to save the NHS.
There will be millions of people, disaffected Conservative voters like Dan Poulter out there, who can see the chaos in the Conservative Party, see the failure to deliver, and are looking at the alternative. And I'd ask those people to trust the doctor, who's seen the Conservative Party up close, has seen the changed Labour Party of Keir Starmer up close, and has decided that ultimately we need a Labour government in this country to get our NHS back on its feet, to turn the economy around and to make sure that we can look to the future with hope and optimism again.
Well, Policing Minister Chris Philp is busy defending the government's handling of the NHS. He's pointing to what he says are record levels of spending.
Just in the last year alone, the NHS has grown by 68,000 staff, and there are today 7,000 more doctors and 21,000 more nurses than there were a year ago. And tens of thousands of people each year are fleeing the Welsh-run the Labour-run NHS in Wales to have treatment in England. The waiting lists, the proportion of the public who are on either very long waiting lists or indeed the proportion of the public in Wales on a waiting list at all is higher, materially higher than it is in England. So on any measure, the Labour Party are doing a terrible job.
Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick is calling for a cap on net migration, saying it's the only way to restore voters' trust. Mr Jenrick says he wants a far more restrictive system, allowing less than 100,000 people a year. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, he said the government's recently passed Rwanda bill will, quote, join the graveyard of policies that failed to tackle illegal migration.
Last 30 years, politicians of all stripes have promised controlled and reduced immigration, only to deliver the opposite. And the public are rightly furious at what's happened. It's placed immense strain on housing, on public services, on community cohesion, and it hasn't improved the economy. What we're proposing is that we return to the tens of thousands, but unlike previously, we have a cap. So Parliament itself votes for a democratic lock, so the public can have a degree of confidence, which they don't have today, that when politicians say these things, they mean it.
Well, meanwhile, Labour says Rishi Sunak needs to wake up and realise that his migration plan is not working. That's after Home Office figures show that more than 7,000 people have arrived illegally by small boats so far this year. Labour's shadow immigration minister Stephen Kinnock says that his party will, quote, crush the smuggling gangs and make sure that those with no right to be in the UK are swiftly returned. The Irish Premier says Ireland won't provide a loophole for anyone else's migration challenges. That's after Rishi Sunak said migrants moving from the UK to Ireland shows that his Rwanda deterrent is working. The Irish government claims the number of migrants crossing into Ireland from Northern Ireland is now higher than 80%. Simon Harris says plans will be put to Cabinet to put in place a new returns policy. The Alba Party MSP, whose vote could be crucial to save Scotland's First Minister, says it's time to build relationships. Ash Regan hasn't confirmed how she'll vote in the motions of no confidence in Holyrood, but says the price of her support will be higher if Humza Yousaf differs. Meanwhile, Yousaf is asking leaders of rival parties to find common ground after the collapse of the SNP's power-sharing deal with the Greens. And finally, the Duke of Sussex is returning to the UK in just over a week's time to attend a ceremony which will be marking the 10th anniversary of his Invictus Games. It'll be the first time that Prince Harry is back in the country since the King's cancer diagnosis in February. He'll be at the Thanksgiving service at St Paul's Cathedral on May the 8th. He's expected to provide a reading at that event. Well, if you want the latest stories, you'll need to sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or by going to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. It's just coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. But you know what? I really missed the panel because I didn't really get a chance to talk about our great British debate in the last hour where I asked, do you believe that mass migration is good for the economy? So let's see what Danny Kelly and Christine make of that. So, Christine Hamilton, political commentator. You're not a political commentator.
We've been through
Somebody's
this,
changed it all. You're not.
I'm not. I'm a housewife.
You're an author and broadcaster and also journalist.
Broadcaster and journalist, yeah. So, would you like to...
Go on, then.
Can I address this first?
Go on.
Wow.
Wow.
So is the question, is it good for the economy or is mass migration just good?
Is it good?
I don't think...
Unfettered. The economy, I think the question is.
OK, I think, unfortunately, we are seeing the ramifications of so many more millions of people since the disastrous decision of Tony Blair. Do you know when Poland joined the EU? Well, what date was this? It should be indelibly etched in everybody's brain, because it's affected this country so much. Well, it's got to be when they were in power. I mean, what's that divvy called? What's his mate called?
Gordon Brown?
No, his press officer. What was his?
Alistair Campbell?
Yeah, them pair of divs. And
pair of what?
Divs. That's a northwest.
If he's not here to defend himself. So
I don't know what a div is.
A div is someone who makes daft decisions.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so Germany, all the other EU countries, as I remember, Germany set a cap. They said, OK, great, Poland's coming into the EU, but we're going to set a cap. Now, Tony Blair and his mate decided that, because they were massively pro-immigration. They thought that diversifying the United Kingdom was going to be a great thing. They didn't set a cap. And I think there was like about 800,000 Poles in the first year or something. And areas all around the country, if you look at the areas that voted leave, for example, the area that voted leave the most was an area in, I'm sure it was near Nottinghamshire, and they had by far the most amount of European immigrants. Now, you have to ask yourself, why did they vote leave in such massive numbers? Isn't that just a hotbed for racism? Or maybe it's just a realistic consequence of unfettered immigration, and it just hasn't worked for them.
It's annoying that because people might complain about mass migration, it suddenly becomes conflated with racism. That's not really the issue. The issue is that you have flooded an area with people, and therefore you have disseminated the resources which the people who actually live there can now no longer access as easily as they could. So you are going to create a civil unrest. Christine?
Well, I mean, Tony Blair did it deliberately because he thought immigrants would be more likely to vote Labour. So he opened the floodgates, and they have never been closed. It does depend who they are, and you're quite right. If you're against immigration, you're regarded as racist, which is absolutely ridiculous. I remember when the Poles first started to come over, and everybody thought they were marvellous. The Polish plumber was your ideal. If you could get a Polish plumber, first of all, they would turn up on time, they would do the job brilliantly, they would undercut British people, and everybody thought they were amazing. And still, apparently, Polish immigrants are 50% more likely to have a job in this country than immigrants from, I won't name the countries because I shall be accused of being racist.
No, you should name the countries.
Well, Somalia, Bangladesh, the Poles are far more likely to assimilate.
So the work ethic is greater.
The work ethic. But, you know, when I was growing up, the population of this country was 50 million, and it hardly moved. In the school textbooks, it was 50. Exactly. Now, any minute now, it's going to be 70 million. That is 20 million more in my lifetime. And it is unbelievable, and everything is stretched, whether they're the roads, the railways, the hospitals, everything is now having to be stretched further and further and further to accommodate all these people. And people worry about, and John Reid was talking about it, about illegal immigration. That is so in our faces because we see these pictures day after day on the television screen of them arriving in these small boats. But the numbers arriving illegally is dwarfed by the numbers who are arriving legally and are being welcomed into this country by successive governments. And as you say, David Cameron said he would get it down to the tens of thousands. Well, I mean, whoopee.
But do you think that a lot of the politicians were deluded in their notion that they thought that if you brought in lots of people from other countries, they could do the lower paid jobs? But actually what it turns out is that even though our population has increased, the numbers of those unemployed has remained pretty much on a similar level.
Because too many of the British and immigrants are too idle to have a job, and now it's far too easy to remain on benefits ever since COVID, when everybody decided that not working and getting paid was rather a good idea, and that's continued
there are
for
those that are genuinely not well and can't work. That's fair enough.
Of course there are.
For it to double in such a short space
Look,
of time.
this is the land of milk and honey. This is I think Great Britain is the European equivalent of America. It's where people want to go. Look what we're known for. We're known for brilliant music. We're known for brilliant cinema. Look at London's West End. Look at the skyscrapers in various cities around. Well, London mostly. I mean, there isn't really a skyscraper.
There aren't skyscrapers all over the country.
Look, my point is, there's a reason why people are getting on inflatables to come across across
Of course
the
there is,
English
yeah.
Channel. There's a reason. It's a great place to live.
They get a hotel and benefits, never mind the skyscrapers.
But you are absolutely right. Sorry.
Yeah, there is a reason why they choose to get on a dinghy, and it's because we're a great place. And you're right, they have this perception. I'm going to call it perception because they have a perception that they're going to get looked after. And they come from these incredibly impoverished third world countries where they have to beg and borrow and haggle for a loaf of bread. And then all of a sudden, they're in the land of milk and honey, and they get things thrown at them.
Well, yesterday...
The more fool us.
Well, yesterday I did a monologue on... and it was actually... I'd played a clip from Newsnight on the BBC, and I can't remember who was chairing it, but she was interviewing a migrant who had stopped in Greece, so he'd come from another country, stopped in Greece, and she said, well, why didn't you stay in Greece? And she went, well, I didn't want to... He said, I didn't want to be in a tent. Because he goes in Greece and migrants get tents. So he then wanted to come to the UK, so he got on the dinghy because he didn't want to live in a tent. And that's exactly the point that you're making, Danny. They don't want to live in tents.
No.
We're offering too much. But like you said, Christine, that is only the small portion of it. Our issue is actually legal migration that we have control of, and that is a mistake made by our governments. And that is truly...
And what does my head in is that if people on the other side of this argument, they always say that they are genuinely fleeing from war-torn countries. I mean, lots of them, I'm sure they are, but also lots of them are coached in what to say. When they're interviewed by Border Force or whatever it is, or the Home Office, they know what to say.
Well, listen, what do you think? Get in touch, gbnews.com. As we look, British troops could be put on the ground in Gaza. Reportedly, the UK government is considering putting soldiers on the ground to help land humanitarian supplies from temporary pier currently being built by the US. Well, listen, stay tuned. We've got loads still to come. GBviews at gbnews.com or tweet us at GBnews. But Christine Hamilton and Danny Kelly still joining me. I want to ask you briefly, Christine, what do you think? British troops could potentially be on the ground in Gaza. They'll be dishing out humanitarian aid, but we are still now involved in active conflict. We're on the ground.
To be honest, anything that can help those poor people in that part of the world who are suffering, it's unimaginable what some of them are suffering. And if British troops can help distribute the aid, etc., then fine. I don't want them to be fighting, but as I understand it, it's perfectly clear they won't be. The Americans won't even put their boots on the ground, which is why the Americans will take them to the water's edge. We then have to collect them and distribute it. As long as they stick to a humanitarian purpose, then I'm all in favour.
Well, they might. Well, what happens there if you're being attacked by? Well, you may have to use your soldier skills.
I think it's a bad look. I think to have British troops on the ground, I really do. I think there are plenty of voluntary organisations. 100,000 people every Saturday march through London asking for Palestine, begging. I mean, they can go and distribute the aid.
Well, that is a good.
That'll really test their desire.
A very good point.
That is a really good point. There's some of those pro-Palestine organisations who are organising these marches week on and week out. Perhaps if they are sincere with their words, and we know some of them are, but many of them you tend to hear a lot of anti-Semitic chanting, then maybe they should go and help out in Gaza, and maybe they should join some of those aid.
And I'm sure some of them would. I'm sure some of them would.
I don't think there will be an almighty rush. I really don't. It's very easy to grab a banner and march through London on a Saturday afternoon, but actually to go and do something that is really useful and will help.
I don't want to see a squaddy with a gun. I don't want to see a squaddy with a pistol or a machine gun.
I don't think they will have, as I understand, they will not have guns.
So they'll be in their...
They'll be sitting ducks,
in their military...
But
outfits.
But listen, a lot of these protesters that you talk about, Christine, when some of them have been stopped about what they're doing, they don't even know why they're here. No, somebody just handed me the sign.
Right.
It's more like that. So, to be fair.
As Danny's mentioned these protests, can we have a halt? They have monopolised London every Saturday for the last goodness knows how many weeks. They have made their point. We've got the message. No more. We should stop them.
That's not going to happen, Christine.
No, I know.
I know that.
There's no point me expressing the hope.
Well, listen, stay tuned. It's just coming up to 16 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, Sir Keir Starmer promised to keep the triple lock. Do you trust him? This is GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I don't think you can go and watch a Shakespeare play unless you already know it. It's almost like you have to understand the story and the characters, and perhaps have even done a bit of reading into it. Because if you went completely blind, especially in today's world where we don't speak in that kind of way, it is, I think, probably a bit alienating.
But Dawn is saying it is alienating at the moment because of the lack of representation.
You know what, the actual phrasing they use, right, OK, the disproportionate representation propagated white, able-bodied, heterosexual, cisgender male narratives. I'm sure there's people sitting in a room going, what's the most ridiculous thing we can come up with today?
Yes.
But really, just chuck all these words at it, cisgender, and it's just insane. Of course, Shakespeare was what it was back in the day, and that's why it's mostly blokes and they're mostly white.
And lots of speculation that he was actually gay, isn't there? Because he never really saw Anne Hathaway very often and stayed away a lot of the time. I don't know, maybe he was a big
He might have
gay
been transgender for all I know. I mean, I don't...
Biggins, I'm looking at you.
No, I think you're right. I mean, you know, I think that goes for the profession too. I mean, I do think I mean, I remember seeing Macbeth in London with Judi Dench and Ian McKellen, and it was one of the most exciting evenings ever. And it was a cold night at the Donmar Theatre, outside and inside, and that gave it atmosphere. There are certain things that you go along and see something else, and you think, I'll walk out in the interval.
Yeah. Macbeth is a sexy play, though.
Let's talk about, there's so many. Can I live to be 100?
Oh, this is depressing.
I think it is depressing. I like to stay here now. I don't want to live to 100.
Oh, don't say that.
I'm right behind
I don't even want to. My father died at 63. That'll be me gone this year.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 19 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget as well, download the GB News app. It is very, very good. You can leave it in screen and then just carry on doing stuff on your phone. It's excellent. It's totally free as well. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you trust Sir Keir Starmer? The Labour leader makes another promise despite U-turning on other election pledges. If his party get into number 10, the leader of the opposition says that he'll keep the state pension triple lock. But can you trust him not to change his mind? After all, he's changed it several times. Well, joining me to discuss, Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatives, Harvey Proctor, former Conservative MP Neil Parish, Conservative MP and farmer Dennis McShane, former Labour MP and Minister for State of Europe. Well, I'm going to start with you, Neil Parish. Do you trust Keir Starmer to not change his mind again? I mean, do you trust him full stop?
No, yes. I think his intentions will be honourable to start with in order not to frighten the horses. But I think spending under Labour will go up so much. There'll be so much pressure for the health service, for, weekend doctors, for education, all of these things. And I think he will review the situation on the triple lock. And I suspect it'll be very unlikely that that triple lock will be in place at the next general election under Labour. So not this one, the forthcoming one. So I think we need to watch him very carefully on this one. He'll look at the books when he gets in and say, oh, well, of course, far worse than I realised under this wicked Tory government. And we will need to look at the triple lock again. But it won't be done immediately. And of course, at the moment, it's all about getting elected and not frightening the horses. So I think we do have to be a little bit sceptical about the promise from Keir Starmer on the triple lock.
Because they're always doing that, aren't they, Dennis? I mean, Keir Starmer's done many different things. things. He has said, I mean, the woman thing just still irritates me, Dennis, I've got to be honest. But he's gone back on so many things. Literally, the green energy, 28 billion. It's not going to be 28 billion now. I don't know when it's going to happen, whether it actually will. He's talked about the non-dom tax status as though that's going to pay for everything. And then he's talked also about the whole private school education. I mean, look, he's now talking about triple lock. He's literally trying to gather whatever audiences he can. He keeps doing this.
The only person who's saying the triple lock should go is the Conservative Party's most senior veteran social policy expert, David Willetts, Lord David Willetts to you and me, former minister, former advisor in Number 10, and he said it should go. The triple lock, I was there when the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats, it's Lib Dem policy as well, don't forget, brought it in 2010. It was accepted by Labour. It wasn't challenged in the 2015 manifesto, the 2017 manifesto, the 2019 manifesto, and Keir Starmer has simply repeated it's not going to change. Now, there are plenty of other arguments you could have about when he's gone, this way and that. But I think you heard it here first, Nana, probably in a conversation with you. I said what Starmer Keir is doing is you've heard of defunding, you've heard of debanking. He is de-targeting Labour. He's removing anything that could be a target for Labour going into this election, batting very effectively defensively, and I think that will be welcomed by every pensioner in the country.
I think he's sitting back on his laurels as things, luckily for him, seem to be collapsing the right way. I don't think he's doing anything, and I think he's saying what you want to hear. That's what I think. But Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatives, what do you think?
Well, I think you can trust Keir Starmer probably on any individual spending pledge, but it depends how they all add up. And here's the truth of the matter. I mean, obviously, the opinion polls suggest that Labour will form the next government. But whoever forms the government, whether it's Conservative, Labour or some sort of coalition government, the overall fiscal position, the balance sheet of the government is going to be in a pretty dire state. And that's in part because the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, who's promised spending constraint, has backed most of that spending constraint into the next Parliament. We've been running budget deficits now since 2001. That's to say we haven't had a balanced budget in nearly a quarter of a century. And whoever comes in, I think is going to have to make some savings and have to find some reductions in public expenditure because this cannot go on. Now, you can pick any particular area. You can say, well, we want to particularly protect pensioners or we want to particularly protect the education budget or the defence budget or the NHS. But you can't particularly protect all of those budgets. And with huge budget deficits into tens of billions still, and with the highest tax burden since the 1940s, I want to hear not just from Keir Starmer, but from politicians from all stripes about which areas of government spending are going to fall, because some of them are going to have to. That's not a matter of ideology, that's a matter of maths.
Because it just feels that, to me, it feels like Keir Starmer will literally say anything to anything. I mean, Dennis, he said so many things. He was struggling with the Jewish vote at one point, and then there was a sort of dividing in his party, so he wanted the Muslim vote as well. And these are just factors of voting, and he knows that old people will form a large part of the electorate coming into this election.
Yes, that's true, but as I say, it's been standard Labour policy. I mean, you can't accuse a man of inventing something that's been bog standard, and all of us in the Labour MPs, when I was one, we accepted it even then. It was a Tory Lib Dem policy, and it was broadly welcome. I think what has changed is, of course, the offer was made when inflation was almost at zero, and we've had under the Tories the highest inflation in Europe. It's come down, but it's still twice as high as France, Germany, etc. We've had nothing to help poor pensioner households in Britain under the Conservatives. So this, at least, is one gesture of reassurance. I agree with Mark, but also I agree with Chris Giles, the economic guru of the Financial Times, who wrote this week that actually there's a lot that's more benign in the economic climate globally and in Britain than is recognised. I mean, the Tories, all the right-wingers will say since day one, Labour says 1 and 1 is 2. No, the sums don't add up. 1 and 1 doesn't equal 2. It equals whatever we want it to be. I accept all of the challenges and problems. I heard an amazing report this week of, say, police forces, neighbouring police forces. One spends £50,000 on their police cars, the other spends £100,000.
God.
One spends £120 at a truncheon, and the other police force goes down, I don't know, to maybe B&Q and gets one for 20 quid. There's so much waste in the public sector. Now, Rachel is an obsessive number crunching, you know, she spends all her nights and days, she doesn't do any real, doesn't have it.
Who are you talking about, Dennis?
Rachel Reeves.
Oh.
And she is, since she was at New College, Oxford, she was a chess master, she knows the moves, and she also knows that if she gets all that wrong, Labour will be out very, very fast.
Neil Paris is doing some funny...
Yeah, Dennis says quite rightly that she knows the moves. That's exactly what it is, Nana. The moves are to reassure everybody until the election is over, and then, you mark my words, they will be spending so much money, they will have to claw it back somewhere. And Dennis is being very reassuring and very nice this afternoon. But at the end of the day, Labour spends a lot of money and they will have to save a lot of money somewhere. And I think the triple lock, I will maybe have to eat my words, but Nana, I think by the next election it will not be in place after this election. So I think you'll find I'd be looking forward to debate in the future with Dennis on this one, because I think Labour's spending plans are not properly funded. They want to spend money on everything, reassure everybody they're not going to tax them anymore, they're going to give them just as many pensions, and at the end of the day it doesn't all add up, Nana. So I think it's been a really good debate this afternoon, and I really it's always nice to see Dennis in particular, because we were together in Parliament, but I think he's wrong on this occasion, and he probably thinks I'm wrong on this occasion.
Mark Littlewood, what do you think? Are either of them wrong?
Well, I mean, I think almost the problem here, which makes the modern political debate a bit strange, is that over the last 14 years of Conservative government, we've seen a massive increase in tax and spending, a massive increase. I mean, if you'd come down as a Martian just today and had looked back over the last 14 years, you probably would have assumed we'd had a Labour government for the last 14 years. We've gone hugely up in tax and spending, really across the board. And that really means that there's not much basis upon which Rachel Reeves or Keir Starmer could want to make it higher, but I also think can practically make it higher. No government in my lifetime has been able to squeeze more than about 38% or so of national income out of the economy in tax. Whatever tax mix you try, that's about the maximum. And we're now at that maximum. And sooner or later, that means that you need to budget within your means. So I fear whoever forms the next government is going to have quite a challenge, and promises made today may be very much undeliverable in 6 or 12 months' time, whether the next government is red or blue.
Well, what colour do you think the next government will be, Mark?
Well, if you believe the opinion polls, and you're a betting man, and I am, I guess the smart's money's on Labour. But politics has been so unpredictable over the past 10 years, I wouldn't bet your house on it.
Dennis McShane, do you think it's definitely a Labour government that's coming in next?
I've always been nervous of that. I've never liked the idea of it's in the bag, but I must be canvassing four or five times this week. There is just an overwhelming sense of let's have a change. The Tories have messed it up. Liz Truss, very close and helped by Mark, messed it up. So many people have messed it up, whatever position they start from. Not Neil, because he wasn't there responsible for the last mess ups. They want to change, but I fully accept that I don't think people are enthusiastic believers that Keir Starmer's Harry Potter with a magic baton and wand that can make everything better. So the challenge is a huge one for Labour. But my goodness, let's have some leaders prepared to meet a challenge instead of running away, going on and on about Rwanda and absolutely irrelevant
Hold on. No, Rwanda might work. And as you've seen what's happening in Ireland, it looks like the Irish aren't happy with the outcome, but it is definitely making a difference. But Nana, so Dennis McShane, very briefly.
Very briefly, just to say, on Rwanda, 4 canvassing sessions this week, 3 or 4 in previous 2 or 3 weeks, not a single voter's mentioned Rwanda. Not one.
You don't know that, Dennis.
I do. I talk to them. I talk to them.
Maybe not for you.
Dennis must have different voters than what we got in the West Country.
It depends where you go. It depends where you go, Dennis. I mean, if you were talking about some lefty place in North London, then maybe.
No,
head down to the coasts and places where they're dealing with the mass migration, and I think you'll hear a different thing when they're dealing with the small boats. All right. So quickly, yes or no? Then Dennis McShane, can we trust Sir Keir Starmer not to change his mind on this one? Yes or no?
Yes. No.
We can trust him.
Yes.
You can trust him.
We can trust him.
You feel you can trust him? Mark Littlewood, yes or no? Can we trust him?
No, because the next government's going to have to change their mind on their supposed generosity, whichever colour it is. Whether it's this one or something else, I don't know, but therefore you can't trust what you're hearing.
Can't trust them.
Frankly,
And
Neil politicians.
Yeah, I agree with Mark that the funds are not there. The triple lock will have to be looked at again, and I suspect Keir Starmer will do precisely that.
Interesting stuff. Thank you so much for your thoughts, Dennis, Mark, and also Neil. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much. So, of course, so what do you think? Do you trust him? You've heard what he's saying. Keir Starmer's telling you that he will keep the triple lock. But you turned on so many things. What are your views? Get in touch. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you trust Sir Keir Starmer? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Christine Hamilton and Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news with Ray.
Thanks, Nana. It's 5:31. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting says Dr Dan Poulter has not been offered a peerage to defect from the Tory party to Labour. Mr Streeting is defending Dr Poulter's decision, saying it shows that only Sir Keir Starmer can be trusted with the NHS. Dr Poulter says he'll sit on the Labour benches until the general election and then stand down. Comes just days before local elections across England and Wales, and the PM is currently refusing to rule out a general election in July. Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick is calling for a cap on net migration, saying it's the only way to restore voters' trust. Mr Jenrick says he wants a far more restrictive system, allowing less than 100,000 people a year. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, he said the government's recently passed Rwanda bill will join the graveyard of policies that failed to tackle illegal migration. Well, meanwhile, Labour says Rishi Sunak needs to wake up and realise that his migration plan isn't working. That's after Home Office figures show that more than 7,000 people have arrived illegally by small boats so far this year. Labour's Shadow Immigration Minister Stephen Kinnock says that his party will crush the smuggling gangs and make sure that those with no right to be in the UK are swiftly returned. The Alba Party has been placed on an election footing as the likelihood of a general election in Scotland looks increasingly likely. Their only MSP, Ash Regan, hasn't confirmed how she'll vote in upcoming motions of no confidence in First Minister Humza Yousaf, but it's thought that her decision could be key. Mr Yousaf is asking leaders of rival parties to find common ground after the collapse of the SNP's power sharing with the Greens. Right, for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. In a few minutes, I'll have more on this hour's Great British Debate. Do you trust Sir Keir Starmer? I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Meghan's launched her new lifestyle range, starting with jams. It's called American Riviera Orchard. Apparently, it's been made from organic fruits growing in Meghan and Harry's Montecito gardens. If we can believe it, I reserve an air of scepticism. But she sent out 50 jars of this jam to influencers and celebrity friends in the hope of trying to boost some sales to her product. But it's ended up winning for King Charles because fans have gone to Highgrove website and King Charles's jam has sold out.
So hang on, why did they go?
Gone through the roof.
Why did they go to the Highgrove website?
Well, I think it's a bit of a blow against Meghan because they're saying we don't want your jam. We're going to go and get the king. So it just shows how popular the king is. This is what she's always wanted. Her dream has been to be like this Gwyneth Paltrow style lifestyle guru. She's always loved Gwyneth's website Goop. When she set up the TIG, which was her website when she was still in Suits as a working actress, that was the brand, the style of brand that she was going for, was this Gwyneth style, New York elite, very princessy. So this is her chance now by trying to cash in on her royal title, because she is now a duchess, so she's using that to try and elevate her brand. And she's really now trying to carve out herself as this new Martha Stewart.
And she's coming out with a cooking show as well on
She's
Netflix.
coming out with a cooking show, and I mean, to be fair to Meghan, she has always tried to say that she's into healthy eating, organic food, cooking, but I don't see this being a success. It just will not happen for her because she's just burnt too many bridges. People just don't believe in her brand. They don't think she's authentic. So, are you an actress? Are you a guru? Are you a duchess? Are you a philanthropist?
Who are you, Meghan?
Who actually are you? This is what we're asking. I don't think anyone knows. I don't think Meghan really knows who she is.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Welcome on board. If you just tuned in, where have you been? We've only got 21 minutes to go. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome. So much still to come. But right now it's time for the Great British debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you trust Sir Keir Starmer? Now, the Labour leader makes another promise, despite U-turning on other election pledges. If his party get into number 10, the leader of the opposition says that he'll keep the state pension triple lock. But can you trust him not to change his mind, seeing as he's U-turned on so many things, including that green policy, and come up with some almost ludicrous ideas, I think, robbing Peter to pay Paul for private schools and to pay for other schools and then to put VAT on private schools. It's just astonishing. But let's see what my panel make of that. Joining me, author and broadcaster Christian Hamilton, and also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. All right, Danny Kelly.
I do trust him. I don't think he's going to lie. I think politicians can change their minds, but...
Yeah, but some people will vote for him on the basis of what he said. Yeah, that's the issue.
The question is framed in a particular manner that suggests he potentially could be about to lie.
Well, no, it changes.
Do you
mind.
trust him?
Yeah, do you trust him?
I do trust him. I don't.
We're focused on the triple lock.
It's a fairly open question.
Do you trust Danny? You're just making it complicated. What was he on about?
He's trying to suggest that it's a perfectly open, simple question.
It is.
Yes. Well, okay. Well, the way I am interpreting it, almost as if the suggestion is that he lies or he's potentially going to lie, and I don't believe he is. Now, could he change his mind? OK, do I trust him not to change his mind?
Exactly. Do you trust him not to change after...
No. No, I don't. I wouldn't trust him as far as I can throw the lad.
I literally just set it up to you exactly.
Surely the question should be, do you think that Keir Starmer is being honest now?
I do.
When he says that would take out your objection.
I do.
No, but I set it up with the other things where he's U-turned, so he's got no excuse.
I do. I trust the lad. I do. I don't think. Look, but I tell you what, he's going after the old Tories, isn't he?
Well,
with the pension.
That's his.
He ain't soft.
Of course he's not. But that's his plan.
As a pensioner, I am delighted that so far the two main parties have all promised to keep the triple lock, so that I'm going to be all right, Jack. But am I? Because there is such a thing as called fiscal drag, which means that as your pension goes up and your income goes up, you get into a higher tax band and you have to pay. So they get it back in some other way. And it'll be very, very easy for him. I mean, pensions use something like half of all government spending. I mean, it is a monument.
Yeah, you lot cost us a fortune.
We do.
I'm teasing you.
We have,
I think
excuse me, we have paid in. I have worked.
Exactly. No, I'm with you, Christine.
I got my first job before I had even left university, and I had holiday jobs before I even went to university.
No, listen,
so I have worked my whole way, and I have paid in.
No, Christine, let me be honest. I do think it's astonishing if people don't think pensioners should be getting a pension. I think they should, and I think he should keep the triple lock. My question is, I don't trust him because he's U-turned on so many things.
It'll be so easy for him to come in. Who was it who, when the Tories got in 2010, they found this message saying, sorry, mate, there's no money.
That was the Treasury, the Labour Treasury.
Whatever his name was. That will undoubtedly be the case this time. There is no money. So he can easily say, look, I'm awfully sorry, pensioners, and thank you for voting for me in droves and giving me such an enormous majority, but sorry, can't follow through.
Do you think he's dishonest, though, when he says it? That's my point.
I'm sure he would like to do it. All governments want to please everybody.
Is he being sincere?
Especially...
Or is he just...
I think he's just grabbing for votes.
Political.
I think he's been political. He's grabbing for votes. I mean, you saw how sort of he was unable to say what a woman is because he didn't want to lose anyone's vote. But unfortunately, in doing that, he almost lost 50% of the population. Yeah. So after 2 years, literally, of saying that he didn't know what one was, or then he eventually said 99% of women don't have penises, which meant 1 in 1,000 do. Then he realised that wasn't a good sum. And then eventually he said, OK, obviously, as if it was all silly.
Nana,
so I'm sorry.
I love you when you're on your hobby horse about Keir Starmer and not knowing what a woman is.
Well, he should come and talk to me because I can tell him all about that. But this show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome some of our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. How many have I got? I've got 4 of you. I'm going to start with Brian Dugan in Solihull. Brian Dugan, do you feel you can trust Sir Keir Starmer considering the exorbitant amount of U-turns?
Well, I mean, the Tories, have they not... they're on their 4th Prime Minister in the past 5 years, Nana, and they're talking about having a 5th before the general election. So are you saying to me that they are a paragon of political steadfastness and reliability?
You haven't been watching the show, have you? I did a monologue on that and we were laughing at them, not in a horrible way, but it's embarrassing. There's nothing left to do but do that. So, no, I don't think that they're much better. I'm asking you specifically, though, about Sir Keir Starmer.
Well, I do trust him. In comparison to that, absolutely. Their record, come on. And with Danny, absolutely spot on in terms of the way the question is framed. Do I trust Keir Starmer? Of course I do. Will he perhaps change his mind over policies as events evolve? Yes, he may do so.
Exactly. After he's got your vote.
Is better. Absolutely not.
The events that will evolve is him getting your vote, then he might change his mind. Right, let's go to Alan Cook. Alan Cook is there in London. Alan.
Hiya, Nana. Well, quite bizarrely, I was actually discussing this with Richard Tice this morning, and I'll tell you what our conclusion was in a minute. But generally, Keir Starmer, he didn't earn his nickname Flip-Flop for no reason. So, yeah, I can't think he can be fully trusted. And his political puppet masters, Brown, Blair and Manderson, have history in this area, because after their landslide victory in '97, Brown said that he would not touch pensions, but he removed the tax credit on dividends, which basically unstabilised the whole of the pension sector. So, yeah, I don't think he can be trusted at all. And Richard and I, what we came to, the conclusion, quite the obvious one, is it doesn't really matter what the politicians say. Unless you grow the economy, you're not going to be able to keep the triple lock there. So the key to this is growing the economy. And can they be trusted not to bankrupt it?
Well, I'd like to hear some of the plans they've got for growing the economy, which we don't seem to be hearing much of at all. Dan Bryan, you're there in Hull. Dan.
Well, it's out of their hands. It's not really a question of trust in that respect, because in my opinion, all politicians say mistrustful things. They'll say anything to get into power, but It's out of their hands because the global economy is going through a transition in the next 5 or 6 years to a whole new economy. There's the de-dollarization of the US dollar. And as that happens, our economy will get caught up in that. So who knows what's going to happen with the economy? You can't make promises like that and expect to get away with them, because it'll come back to bite him.
Because they say, I mean, that's quite a great statement. He should, I would suggest he doesn't mention that. But Lee Webb in Bedfordshire, do you feel you can trust him? Do you think he's being genuine with this one?
I don't trust him on this triple lock at all, because I just wonder where the money's going to come from to keep the triple lock. He's got to grow the economy. I don't see any plans in Labour growing the economy. I don't see the current government being able to grow the economy at all, unless we have something really radical to be able to do that. So, no, I don't trust Keir Starmer. But then again, I don't trust the current lot either.
Well, listen, thank you so much, my great British voices. Brian Dugan in Surrey, Hull, Dan, Brian. Where are you, Dan?
In Hull.
In Hull. Nice to see you. I think that was one of the most boring places in the UK. Jeez,
You can go off people very quickly.
Give him a chance to respond to that outrageous slur on the great city of Hull.
No, it's lovely, isn't it, Dan? I'm sure it's lovely. I've been to Hull once. I'm teasing you. And also Lee Webb.
Well done.
Lovely to talk to you all. Really great to have your four voices. There's our great British voices. I'm only teasing you if you're there in Hull. It's not that boring. Right, next it's time for Supplement Sunday, where the panel and I discuss some of the news stories that caught their eye. Do not go anywhere.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, we hold on to rather unsettled weather conditions across the UK, but we will also see a gradual rise in temperature. Low pressure's on the scene at the moment, and it's this weather front towards the northeast of the UK that's bringing some outbreaks of quite persistent rain, coupled with quite tightly packed isobars, so quite a blustery feel to the weather as well. And we do hold on to outbreaks of rain across the far northeast of Scotland, heading into the overnight period. Elsewhere, there'll be some clear spells for a time, but the showers out towards the west and southwest certainly do gather into the early hours of Monday, turning quite heavy and becoming more organised by the morning on Monday itself. Could see a touch of frost in one or two very sheltered spots, but on the whole, it's a frost-free night. And then into Monday, we'll see an east-west split, much as we did on Sunday, but this time it's the east seeing the best of the weather. Out towards the east and southeast of the UK, here we'll see some sunshine at times and mostly dry weather. Whereas out towards the west, quite a few showers from the word go. They become more widespread and quite heavy at times here, also affecting other northern areas as we head into the afternoon. In the best of the sunshine, it will be warmer than on Sunday, particularly towards the southeast, highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, nearer 12 to 14 degrees towards the north, which is close to the seasonal average. As for Tuesday, well, again, it's the east that will fare best, with the best of the dry and bright weather at times. Whereas out towards the west, a good rash of showers, those showers merging to longer spells of rain at times. It does stay fairly unsettled during the week ahead, with showers at times, but notice those temperatures also rising into the high teens or low 20s.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's near the end of the show. It's fine, though. It's all good, because there's still loads more to come here on GB News. But it's time now for Supplement Sunday, where my panel and I discuss some of the news stories that caught their eye. You know, somebody would be really happy with that, because I get a lot of people saying, it's not me and my panel, it's my panel and I. So somebody's written... I get that a lot.
No.
Yeah, when I do the top end of the show, sometimes people send me that, and one guy sent me that, and then he spelled my name wrong. So I said, well, actually, I messaged him back and I said, well, it's actually Nana Akua.
As I'm the
Akura.
How does he get Akua wrong? How does he spell Akua?
A-C-U-A.
Oh, I see.
K-U-A. But listen...
As I'm the resident pedant on the channel, the people who say that it's not me and my panel, they are right. It shouldn't be.
I don't care then.
No, I know.
That's the way
I'm
I
just saying
think,
that they are right. No, it's fine.
But, you know, but
I would never dream of correcting you.
Exactly, Christine.
May I correct you? You know,
No,
sometimes...
you can't correct anybody.
I can dream of correcting
Quite.
you. All day long.
So you won't be back.
It's the way younger people talk nowadays.
Oh, well, I'll take that compliment.
Well,
I am younger.
I'm down with the kids.
So my panel and I, or me and my panel, discuss some of the other stories that caught their eye. Who wants to go first?
After one of your contributors, Danny Boy from Hull, someone objected to someone, I think it was you, saying Hull's boring. You won't believe it,
right,
but there's a story here about 29 reasons Hull was named one of the worst places to live.
I told you.
Yeah, apparently Hull's a bit of a dump. And that's not my words. This is the newspaper. Winter's even worse up in Hull. There's very few historic buildings. The people are all a bit miserable. And so, Nana, you retracted that. I don't think you needed to retract anything.
I was being polite, but listen, I'm sure there's some great places in Hull to visit.
Well, according to this, it's a dump.
Well, yeah, OK. But I'm sure, listen, that's not fair, because, you know, you live in your own little place and you love it and you get to...
That's right.
It's not about what's around you, it's about who.
You love your own little dump.
It's about
of course you do.
around you. And right now, I've got you two. Christine Hamilton.
I can't believe you're being so rude about...
I wasn't.
I'm not. It's a journalist. I'm just reading his words.
OK, this is something called Visit Britain, and this is apparently our flagship tourism agency, and they have told workers that they cannot use words like blind spot or man hours. They can't say guru, they have to say expert. I'm not quite sure why, but they can't. They can't say minorities, they have to say marginalised.
What?
They can't say blacklist, they have to say deny list. They can't even say man up. Well, we know you can't say man up.
Well, I can say that.
You have to say be brave. I mean, it is utterly ridiculous. Obviously, you can't say man hours, you have to say person hours. You can't, and this is what annoys me. The word guys, I have always used it, and you might go into a
generic term.
It's generic term for just hi guys. You know, it just means everybody. Can't say that anymore. You have to say everyone or team. I mean, it's a complete nonsense.
I would say guys was definitely more talking about men than women, though.
No, it isn't.
No, not
That's
nowadays.
just a little observation from the only guy on the panel.
Well, of course it is, because it's guys and dolls, isn't it? But imagine saying dolls to a group of women.
Hey, doll. Well, listen, yeah, that might not go down so well. Well, listen, and mine is on this now. This I just found in the Daily Mail. Could you endure 40 jabs of injectable moisturiser at a cost of 850 quid to smooth out wrinkly tummies? So this is something that says certain cosmetic surgeries around the UK are offering this jab, and apparently it's got hyaluronic acid, and that is the body's, it's like a natural thing the body produces to smooth out all the wrinkles. So apparently, oh my God, that might work on people's faces as well. Listen, I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying that this is my supplement, and I might get this done ASAP.
Who has wrinkly tummies?
Women.
Well, not you. Yours is filled out. If it's filled out, then
if it's filled out, there ain't a wrinkle on my tummy.
But if you lose weight, then it'll go.
Yeah. Can I just say how fabulous Nana looks as well? A lady of a certain age, how youthful she looks, and there ain't a wrinkle on her face, is there? There ain't a wrinkle on her face. And you, my beautiful
I was
friend.
wondering if I was going to get a look in. I'm many years older than her.
And you look fabulous with it too.
Thank you, darling. And so do you. While we're all saying how wonderful we all are, Danny, you look wonderful.
Yeah, you do.
Ain't a wrinkle on her.
Not a wrinkle on your head.
Bit perspiring. It's so hot in the studio.
Oh, I know. Well, it's because Nana likes it hot.
No, I like it hot.
She's a bit of hot stuff.
Thank you very much. Look at these two. What do they want? What do they want? Well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, do you think that mass migration abortion is good for the economy. And according to one Twitter poll, 95% of you said no, only 5% of you say yes. There you go. I also asked, with Sir Keir Starmer saying a Labour government would keep the pension triple locked, do you trust him? 91% of you say no, they don't trust him at all. It's literally in the 90s today. Thank you so much for your views, and a huge thank you to my panel. Thank you so much to the fabulous Christine Hamilton. Christine, thank you so much for joining me. It's such a pleasure to see you.
It's my weekly treat on a Sunday afternoon.
And a huge thank you to Danny Kelly as well. A huge thank you.
I know, fabulous.
And as ever, a massive thank you to you.
Massive? Gets worse.
Massive thank you to you and for your company. Neil Oliver is up next. I'll see you next week, same time, same place. I'll leave you with the weather. Enjoy.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Over the next few days, we hold on to rather unsettled weather conditions across the UK, but we will also see a gradual rise in temperature. Low pressure's on the scene at the moment, and it's this weather front towards the northeast of the UK that's bringing some outbreaks of quite persistent rain, coupled with quite tightly packed isobars, so quite a blustery feel to the weather as well. And we do hold on to outbreaks of rain across the far northeast of Scotland heading into the overnight period. Elsewhere there'll be some clear spells for a time, but the showers out towards the west and southwest certainly do gather into the early hours of Monday, turning quite heavy and becoming more organised by the morning on Monday itself. Could see a touch of frost in one or two very sheltered spots, but on the whole it's a frost-free night. And then into Monday we'll see an east-west split, much as we did on Sunday, but this time it's the east seeing the best of the weather. Out towards the east and southeast of the UK, here we'll see some sunshine at times and mostly dry weather. Whereas out towards the west, quite a few showers from the word go. They become more widespread and quite heavy at times here, also affecting other northern areas as we head into the afternoon. In the best of the sunshine, it will be warmer than on Sunday, particularly towards the southeast, highs of 16 or 17 Celsius, nearer 12 to 14 degrees towards the north, which is close to the seasonal average. As for Tuesday, well, again, it's the east that will fare best, with the best of the dry and bright weather at times. Whereas out towards the west, a good rash of showers, those showers merging to longer spells of rain at times. It does stay fairly unsettled during the week ahead, with showers at times, but notice those temperatures also rising into the high teens or low 20s.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday the 2nd of May,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections, we'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday the 2nd of May at midnight on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, fellow travellers, blithe spirits. Great to have you. Welcome to the Neil Oliver Show on GB News TV, online and on radio. This week, I will be taking an in-depth look at the ongoing war in Ukraine. I'll be joined by retired US Army Colonel Douglas McGregor for his insights. I'll be asking him, perhaps more than anything else, when will it all end? I'll also be joined by Molly Kingsley from Us for Them to talk about the World Health Organisation, specifically the apparent climb down on planned changes to their pandemic preparedness treaty. Plus plenty of discussion with my panellist for this evening, broadcaster and journalist Ingrid Tarrant. But first, the all-important update on the latest news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting says Dr Dan Poulter has not been offered a peerage to defect from the Tory party to Labour. Mr Streeting is defending Dr Poulter's decision, saying it shows that only Sir Keir Starmer can be trusted with the NHS. Dr Poulter says he'll sit on the Labour benches until the next general election and then stand down. It comes just days before local elections across England and Wales. Well, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick is calling for a cap on net migration, saying it's the only way to restore voters' trust. Jenrick says he wants a far more restrictive system, allowing less than 100,000 people a year. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, he said the government's recently passed Rwanda bill will join the graveyard of policies that failed to tackle illegal migration. And the Alba Party has been placed on an election footing as motions of no confidence in Scotland's First Minister make a general election there look increasingly likely. Their only MSP, Ash Regan, hasn't confirmed if she'll support Humza Yousaf, but it's thought that her vote could be crucial. Mr Yousaf is asking leaders of rival parties to find common ground ahead of that vote. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen right now or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now let's get straight back to Neil Oliver.
The warmongers have their tails up, that much is obvious. A person must wonder what gods it is they worship, gods that demand blood sacrifice on such a scale. Ukraine is not quite sacrificing its children yet, but given the youthful faces of some of those en route to the fighting front, it's a close-run thing. The death toll in Ukraine is already estimated by Western intelligence agencies at 500,000 souls, a scale of loss of human life in conflict not seen in Europe since World War II. And still, the warmongers have not yet drunk their fill. In the United States Congress last week, in the House of the American people, on sacred ground, if you will, members were on their feet to celebrate their decision to send another $60-odd billion to that charnel house. 500,000 human beings cold in the clay, $60 billion. We've learned